Chapter 465. Perhaps this really confirmed the words of the ancestral monster's remnant soul and immortality. It wasn't easy for a heavenly treasure to recognize a master. A month and a half passed, and there was still no news of the pre-celestial wood. Qin Yu's heart was filled with unwillingness and anticipation, but now he was forced to accept reality. His heart was filled with helplessness. Qin Yu let out a long breath and stood up. His heart was restless, and his cultivation was greatly reduced. He decided to temporarily calm his mood. The Dao Arena's top training room naturally had excellent scenery. Qin Yu sat in the shade of the trees, his fingers gently tapping the table. He couldn't help but ponder. During this time, he had constantly raised the price to search for the pre-celestial wood. He had visited all the shops in Four Seasons City and even asked Kong Mingxiao. But in the end, he hadn't found anything. Could it be that after all his efforts, he still couldn't avoid the fate of abandoning the purple-backed blue-wing ants? Puff! A light sound awakened Qin Yu. He pulled his fingers out from the exquisite table and looked at the crisscrossing marks on the table. He couldn't help but bitterly smile. Luckily, he had some harvest during this time. His path of metal was approaching perfection, and he could make a breakthrough at any moment. At this time, Qin Yu's eyes flashed. He lifted a hand, and a jade slip fell into his hand. As he probed it with his divine sense, his eyes widened, and he revealed a look of pleasant surprise. He stood up and walked to the training room's door. With a flick of his sleeves, he saw Kong Mingxiao standing outside. He smiled and said, "It looks like this item is indeed important to fellow Daoist Qin Yu. This is a catalog sent by the auction house. The item you're interested in is on page 62. As he spoke, he took out a jade slip. After pouring in magic power, the jade slip projected a clear image. Qin Yu flipped to page 62. In the dense catalog of auction items, he found an incomparably black object that looked like a withered branch. There was a brief record below it. Number 137, a withered branch obtained from an unknown land. Attributes unknown, effects unknown. In the light, it is black, and in the darkness, it emits light. The image was small, and the introduction was brief. It was clear that the auction house didn't value this item too much. Qin Yu stared at it for a long time, and then looked up. Kong Mingxiao smiled. There is a universe within. These words dispel the last bit of doubt in Qin Yu's heart. Wild joy gushed out from his heart. He cupped his hands together and deeply bowed. "Thank you, Arena's steward Kong." He didn't know where Kong Mingxiao got this information from, but there was no reason for him to lie to him. Moreover, the phrase "in the light, the color is dark, and in the darkness, there is light" was an extremely strong piece of evidence. Connate wood. This was connate wood. Qin Yu flipped through the invitation card and casually tossed it into his identity token. He smiled. When he received this invitation card that would only open half a year later, he had been sighing about how useless it was. He never imagined that today would come. Perhaps this was the mysteries of the world. It was impossible to predict. You would never know what would happen in the future. 5 days later, the auction took place as scheduled. As the master of the Dao Arena, Kong Mingxiao was naturally invited. However, Qin Yu didn't follow him. Instead, he put on a black robe and directly entered the auction house. But it was clear that his heroic actions had won the respect of the auction house. His seat was arranged near the front. The wide sofa was incomparably comfortable. Qin Yu leaned back and closed his eyes in meditation. An hour later, the surrounding noise quieted down. A silver-haired auctioneer stepped onto the round stage. He smiled and greeted everyone. Then, he clapped his hands and said, "Lights out." Immediately, in the giant auction house, there were only 3 crystal lamps left above the round stage. The bright light gathered on the round stage, making it particularly eye-catching. The well-dressed auctioneer didn't waste any time and went straight to the main topic. The first auction item, as usual, is always a good item. It will arouse everyone's interest, and our auction house will earn more commission. The audience roared with laughter. The next auction item was indeed quite good. It was a treasure found in an ancient ruin. Although it was a bit damaged, it was still extremely powerful. Many cultivators began to bid. The atmosphere in the auction house soon heated up. One by one, the auction items were placed on a round platform. After the competition, they found their new owners. Time passed quietly during this process. The auction house used a mixed method of bidding. Many common and common treasures were placed among the more precious items in order to sell for the highest price. Auction item number 137 was only sent onto the stage 4 hours after the auction began. The auctioneer smiled. He looked at the dark, withered branch placed on the crystal plate, his eyes filled with praise. Before the auction begins, there is something I must tell everyone so that we can better estimate its value and avoid missing out on a treasure. He paused for a moment and continued to say, 2 days ago, my auction house received an honored guest. Although he hid his identity, I can confirm that he is an extremely honored existence. This mysterious honored guest put forth an extremely exaggerated price in order to purchase this withered branch with unknown attributes and unknown effects ahead of time. But in the end, upholding the principles of fairness and justice, we refused this honored guest and chose to place it in the auction house so that all guests can have a chance to compete for it. The unknown isn't necessarily useless. Perhaps beneath its ordinary surface lies a beauty and magnificence that you and I cannot even imagine. This mysterious withered branch is black under the light and bright under the darkness. The starting bid for this item is 80,000 spirit stones, and each increase must be no less than 1,000 spirit stones. Let the auction begin. One couldn't help but admit that this auctioneer had an extremely powerful ability to bewitch people. Many guests who weren't interested in auction item number 137 now had their eyes light up. The auction house's reputation had always been excellent, and they wouldn't make things up. Since someone said that they were willing to spend a large amount of money to buy it before the auction, then it must be true. 80,000 spirit stones wasn't a small amount. But to those who had the qualifications to enter the auction house, it wasn't anything at all. They could just treat it as an interesting attempt. 80,000 spirit stones. The one who spoke was a female cultivator ranked near the front of the individual guests. Her face was still filled with childishness, and there was still some baby fat on her cheeks. Her eyes were bright and lively. Although she didn't display an overbearing attitude, she still revealed a natural grace and elegance. It was clear that her status wasn't ordinary. Of course, if you couldn't see this, the two burly men sitting on her left and right were obviously her guards. Their cold gazes and auras were also the best evidence. But as mentioned before, those who had the qualifications to participate in the auction today were all wealthy people, and those who were wealthy usually had high status. Even if this female cultivator came from extraordinary background, she couldn't frighten everyone. 100,000. The one who spoke was also a female cultivator. However, she was seated in a VIP box that had been specially set up for them. The childish female cultivator puffed up her cheeks and said, 200,000. I want this branch. You want it? What do you want? I'm not a man, and even if I were, I still wouldn't be able to stand your bold and unrestrained style. For this thing, I'll bid 300,000. The voice in the private room contained a hint of laughter, and a hint of flirtatiousness flowed out. Such a bold conversation, in particular, caused many men to secretly swallow their saliva. The childish female cultivator's face flushed red. She opened her mouth to retort, but no words came out. She nearly cried out in anxiety. The eyes of the two guards beside her flashed with an ominous light. They were about to stand up, but at this time, they coughed, and shock filled their eyes. They looked at the box again and revealed a deep sense of dread. One of the guards lowered his head and said something in a low voice. The childish female cultivator bit her lips and said, 500,000. Bright laughter sounded out, filled with elegance and elegance. Two beauties. There is no need to damage your friendship over a mere withered branch. How about this young master buy it? He paused for a moment and then quoted a price, 600,000. The auction house was silent. Many people stared at these three people, their eyes strange. Although this withered branch was a bit strange, 600,000 spirit stones wasn't a small amount of money. It wasn't worth it just to satisfy one's own curiosity. As for the last young master who bid 600,000 spirit stones, his goal clearly wasn't the withered branch itself. His goal was to attract the attention of two young women. To spend a fortune for the sake of beauty, this sort of thing wasn't anything new in the auction house. Most of the people who did this were young masters with rich backgrounds. But today, the number of young masters in the auction house was unexpectedly high. Another voice sounded out from the VIP box. "Brother Zhang, how could a mere 600,000 spirit stones be enough to obtain the treasure that two beauties are fighting over? How about I round it up to 1,000,000? It's just 1,000,000 spirit stones. How clever can it be?" A third young master joined in. 2,000,000. I'm just playing with double the price. How heroic. Beneath his black robes, Qin Yu's complexion darkened. The sudden appearance of jealousy had ruined his plans. He originally thought that it would be best to not draw attention to himself and bid for the pre-celestial wood. In order to appear as natural as possible, he had already bid twice and obtained two small items at a moderate price. But no matter how good his plan was, in the face of a group of young masters competing with each other, his plans were torn to shreds. He couldn't help but look at the childish female cultivator in the front row. Although he knew he couldn't blame her, if it weren't for this little girl speaking up, there wouldn't have been such twists and turns. Today, it was hard not to attract attention. From the half-closed window of the VIP box, an extremely beautiful face appeared. She covered her mouth and giggled, her eyes seeming to hide countless little hooks. Young masters giving me face like this makes me feel uneasy. I like this item, but what should I do? Haha, simple. This young master will bid for it and gift it to Miss Zhou. A fourth young master brazenly said, 4,000,000, double the price. I've played this sort of game since I was young, and I've never tasted defeat. Domineering to the max. Qin Yu cursed this person inwardly. Indeed, with him stepping forward, the three young masters in front were immediately enraged. Doubling the price is such a vulgar thing, and yet you can say it in such a righteous manner. How strange. This young master suddenly changed the topic and smiled. 5,000,000 spirit stones. Miss Mu, I will bid for this item and gift it to you. The young female cultivator's cheeks flushed red, and she looked incomparably shy. She turned and glanced at the box from which the voice came. Her shy and timid appearance made one's heart itch. How was this unbearably shy? This was clearly a little seductress that had reached the point of perfection. It was just that while Miss Zhou was bright and beautiful, the truth was that their hearts were the same. These two seductresses must have done this on purpose today. It's fine if you want to argue, but why do you have to choose what I want? Qin Yu's eyes were icy cold. If looks could kill, then these two seductresses and a flock of peacocks in heat would have already been torn to pieces. As Qin Yu was thinking of murderous thoughts, the price of the pre-celestial would continue to rise. In the blink of an eye, it broke past 10,000,000. To these young masters, spirit stones weren't anything at all. Moreover, in today's situation, who would be willing to lower their heads in front of others? Qin Yu took a deep breath and suppressed the hostility in his heart. He coldly watched them compete. Now wasn't a good time to make a move. These young masters cared about face the most. It wouldn't be too late to wait until they finished killing each other and then fight for it. This was because at that time, he would only need to face a single person. Everyone was left dumbfounded. They watched helplessly on as the price of some unknown withered tree branch began to soar. Even those that were originally interested in it completely suppressed their thoughts. This bunch of bastard young masters were trying to show off. Anyone who dared to compete with them was an idiot. 88,000,000 spirit stones. The one who liked to double the price bid with a heroic spirit. The entire auction house fell silent. At this time, if he dared to continue doubling the price, it was clear just how confident he was. The three young masters that were competing fell silent. Although they wanted to take advantage of this chance to obtain more attention from these beauties, nearly 100,000,000 spirit stones wasn't a sum they could casually use. Even for them, nearly 100,000,000 spirit stones wasn't a sum they could casually use. Moreover, Today was more of an opportunity to get to know Zhou Feng Wang and Mu Qingwan and to express their intentions. If he really wanted to marry these two seductresses, he would have to rely on his performance at the Demon Ascension Gate and the efforts of his family. The Sun family is truly worthy of being called rich enough to rival a nation. This brother here admires you greatly. This withered tree branch is yours. When it comes to spirit stones, I truly cannot compare with Brother Sunday. I only hope that at the Demon Ascension Gate, Brother Sun can still have today's glory and prestige. I heard that in this Demon Ascension Gate selection, there are many dazzling characters that have appeared. There are even some with tyrannical, demonic bloodlines. Sun Zifu, you absolutely cannot be knocked to the ground and lose the face of us aristocratic juniors. Sun Zifu was the one who claimed to have never tasted defeat in a game of doubling the price. He laughed and said, "There is no need for you three brothers to worry about this matter. I am confident that I can smoothly enter the demonic path. But today, I am indebted to you three for giving up your treasures. Tonight, I will arrange a banquet at Drunken Immortal Restaurant. I hope that you three brothers will honor us with your presence." Humph! The three people coughed and didn't speak further. Sun Zifu smiled. He picked up the cup in front of him and drank a mouthful, feeling refreshed from head to toe. "Young master, did you spend too much? This old servant knows that my family has plenty of spirit stones, but today is not a proper occasion. Miss Zhou and Miss Mu might not appreciate it." An old servant bowed to the side, a flattering smile on his face. His wrinkled face was like a blooming chrysanthemum. "What does an old thing like you know? Today, this young master wants to spend in a tyrannical manner. You should also know that what our Sun family has the most is spirit stones. Do you understand what it means to play to our strengths and avoid our weaknesses? If we want to move these two little monsters, we can only rely on shiny spirit stones." Sun Zifu's eyes flashed with a shrewd light. "As for whether or not these two little monsters will acknowledge it, that doesn't matter at all. This is because I didn't do it for them to see." The old man's face was full of praise. "Young master is wise and heroic. This old servant cannot compare. As long as this matter spreads to the Zhou and Mu families, we will have shown our sincerity. Hee, young master is young master. Your methods are brilliant." Sun Zifu kicked him. "Stop flattering me." Although he said this, there was a bit more of a smile on his face. It was obvious he was enjoying it. On the auction stage, the silver-haired auctioneer was full of smiles. Although the final bid of nearly 100 million spirit stones was high, he had seen many grand scenes and didn't lose his composure. He smiled and said, "Young Master Sun has bid 88 million spirit stones. Is there any other guest who wants to bid? If there isn't, then this magical dead would belong to young Master Sunday in the box," the old servant proudly shouted. "Hurry up and announce it. Since our young master has bid this price, who dares to compete with us?" A flattering aura flowed in the air. The silver-haired auctioneer's smile didn't change. He nodded and was about to comply, but at this time, another young voice sounded. 100 million spirit stones. The auction hall suddenly fell silent. The silver-haired auctioneer directly swallowed the words he was about to say. He pointed a finger and said, "This honored guest has bid 100 million. Everyone, today's first auction item has appeared. Please let us remember this exciting moment. Is there anyone who wants to bid a higher price?" Sun Zifu coldly snorted and his eyes turned fierce. The old man beside him bent down and said, "I will immediately investigate this person's identity. To dare compete with young master, that person has no idea of death or danger. There's no time. Let's take it first." Sun Zifu put down his wine cup and leaned back in his chair. His voice was calm and indifferent. 200 million. Since he said he would double it, he naturally had to double it. 210 million. Another voice spoke up without hesitation. Sun Zifu's lips twitched. 420 million. He clenched his fists and his nails dug into his flesh. This was already the limit of what he could bear. If the other party increased it any further, he would have to give up if he didn't want to slap himself in the face. "Bastard! 400 million spirit stones was enough to pile up several mountains. Just which bastard was it that dared to interfere despite knowing that this was the dignified demonic path's Sun family? This matter wasn't over. Second-generation Sun's eyes flashed with a bloodthirsty light. In the auction house, there was another person who was secretly alarmed. This person was naturally Chinyu, who was preparing to seize the pre-celestial wood. The moment that the bid sounded out, he looked in the darkness and accurately found the bidder. His pupils shrank. Chi-chung. That's right. It was Chu Taidu's extremely beloved disciple. It was said that after Chu Taidu died, all of his assets had been quietly swallowed up by him. Even so, with Chi-cheng's status and background, there was no reason for him to throw out so many spirit stones at today's auction. Not to mention offending the Sun family. But if he were to attract so much attention, the amount of greed he would attract would be enough for him to drink. But Chi-chung had acted just like this. In an incomparably tyrannical manner, he had brazenly tossed out a massive amount of spirit stones. The auction house had already sent a cultivator to verify his identity. This was the usual practice of the auction house. Otherwise, if one recklessly bid and couldn't afford it in the end, that would be a great joke and trouble. Looking at the shocked auction house cultivator, as well as the respectful expression on his face after he regained consciousness, the result was obvious. 430 million. Chi-chung was calm, but his heart was tumbling with tempestuous waves. In the past, he had imagined himself possessing unsurpassed power and wealth, becoming the focus of everyone's attention. Today, his dream had finally come true. Feeling the shock and awe in the eyes of those around him, Chi-chung felt a great sense of satisfaction. Although he was well aware that there were no benefits to being so high profile, with the immortal sect as his backing, as long as he didn't violate any taboos, no one could harm him. Tonight, he was the center of the world. In the VIP box, Sun Zifu waved his hand and smashed his wine cup. Scarlet wine soaked through the carpet. His face was filled with rage, but he quickly composed himself. Since you want it so much, I'll give it to you. The flattering old man's eyes were cold and gloomy. This old servant will help young master get it back. 440 million. Another voice suddenly rang out. Sun Zifu looked up, his eyes shaking. After a brief period of silence, the entire auction house was filled with cries of alarm. Chi-chung himself wasn't considered much, but as Chu Taidu's disciple, his level of friendship wasn't low. In other words, there were many people in the auction house that recognized him. When he first made a bid, he attracted countless eyes, most of them cold and greedy. They were all shocked by the wealth left behind by Chu Taidu. As for Chi-cheng's actions, they were attributed to him being blinded by wealth and trying to obtain the attention of the Zhou family and Mu family misses. Of course, this was laughable. But now, someone made another bid, overturning this speculation. Perhaps there might be one person stupid enough to spend hundreds of millions of spirit stones to obtain the attention of a beauty, but there wouldn't be two of them appearing at the same time. Chi-cheng's eyes brightened. He smiled and stood up. Chinyu, you finally made a move. Countless cultivators felt their hearts skip a beat. Their originally inquisitive eyes were now filled with surprise. The black-robed man was silent for several breaths of time. He lifted his hand and pulled off his hood, revealing a calm expression. Chi-chung, I'm curious. How did you know it was me? Chi-chung brightly smiled. I'm sorry, but I refuse to answer. Today, I'm going to fight for my teacher's honor. You won't be able to get this branch. Chinyu took a deep breath. 700 million spirit stones. Chi-chung crossed his hands behind his back. 800 million. Kong Mingqiao's voice sounded out from the VIP box. Fellow Taoist Chinyu, if you need, the Dao Arena can lend you some of spirit stones. Chi-chung laughed. Today, no matter how much Chinyu bids, I will bid 100 million higher than him. Kong Mingqiao sneered. Junior, you are far too arrogant. Chi-chung bowed. Arena Steward Kong, you can give it a try. The unremarkable Chi-chung had suddenly risen and seized all of Chu Taidu's family property. Moreover, he hadn't encountered any trouble because of this. Today, he didn't hesitate at all and directly challenged Chinyu. He didn't even give in to Kong Mingqiao, no one was a fool, especially those rich and powerful people. Looking at the high-spirited and incomparably arrogant Qi Cheng, everyone could see a giant monster behind him. In the private room, Sun Zifu shivered. This matter ends here. Whether it was Qin Yu or Qi Cheng, who had likely been chosen by the immortal sect, they weren't people to be provoked. The old servant's smile was uglier than a cry. It seems there isn't enough time. Before his voice fell, two shadows suddenly shot out from the shadows of the auction stage. Cold lights shot towards Qi Cheng. Bang! A tyrannical aura erupted from beside Qi Cheng. Before this thin old man with cloudy eyes attacked, his existence was as weak as air. But as soon as he attacked, he was like a blazing sun, his tyrannical aura sweeping out in all directions. The two cold lights trembled and collapsed. They continued to spread upwards, directly shattering the two assassins. A strange strength acted upon every piece of flesh and bone, grinding them to powder. In just a breath of time, the two living assassins had completely vanished. The thin old man slowly sat down. The wild aura around him converged, and he returned to his ordinary appearance. But now no one dared to underestimate him in the least. This was a super powerhouse at the 8th level of the Blue Sea realm. Even in the entire land of divinity and demons, he was an existence that could dominate a region. But now, he was willing to stay behind Qi Cheng, becoming an unremarkable backdrop. This was enough to verify everyone's speculations. Sun Zifu let out a long breath of relief. It was good that he died. Although it wasn't easy for the family to raise Deathsworn, being able to avoid a great deal of trouble was already the best result. He ruthlessly glared at the old servant. "I'll bury this matter in my stomach and pretend it never happened." Qi Cheng's smile became increasingly calm. "It looks like some people have developed killing intent towards me. But that doesn't matter. If they want to kill me, then feel free to do so." He looked up, his eyes cold. "But today, let's finish the auction first. Qinyu, are you going to increase the price or not? Otherwise, this mystical dead wood will belong to me." Qinyu took a deep breath and turned to leave. He knew that Qi Cheng wanted to force him to make a move. Although it was true that Qi Cheng wanted to smash apart his face, this was what Qi Cheng was looking forward to. Why did the immortal sect not hesitate to pay any price to prevent him from obtaining the pre-celestial wood? Was it purely out of hostility towards him? Or had they sensed something? Qinyu's heart shrank. He began to think about whether or not he had been too careless. But there was clearly only a single copy of the monster raising mystic art, and no one in this world should know anything about the soul-summoning bell. Qinyu took a deep breath and suppressed these thoughts. With things having come to this point, there was no longer any meaning in thinking about these things. The pre-celestial wood was in Qi Cheng's hands. He couldn't do anything in the auction house, but after he left, that didn't mean he couldn't make a plan. However, if he could think of something, the immortal sect would also be able to. Qi Cheng was bait, luring him to attack first. Once Qin Yu attacked, he would lose the protection of a Dao arena master. What should he do? Should he give up? Or should he take a risk? At this time, a thought fluctuation spread into his mind. "I originally thought you knew, but it seems you really don't. If you have time, come here as soon as possible." The one who transmitted this thought was the little blue lamp. Qin Yu's heart skipped a beat. He felt that there was some important information in these words, but the little blue lamp didn't respond. After entering the Dao arena, Qin Yu closed the doors to the training room and sat down cross-legged. His divine sense passed through the sealed dimension ring and descended into the distant small world. The star-cutting grass excitedly danced in the air, tearing open holes in space. As it saw Qin Yu's distressed appearance, it calmed down and lifted him into the medicine field. Soon, the star-cutting grass came to a stop. A spirit plant bathed in darkness appeared in front of Qin Yu. It had two extremely beautiful branches. Even in the pitch-black darkness of the night, it couldn't conceal its dazzling colors and beautiful textures that seemed as if they were fantastical and beautiful. Qin Yu's eyes widened. This is pre-celestial wood. The little blue lamp's thought fluctuations spread out. Several months ago, you tossed in a root. Do you remember? Qin Yu's complexion was strange. That's right, that root was the spirit root of a pre-celestial wood. At this moment, Qin Yu's heart surged with excitement. He felt 120% gratitude towards the deceased Chu Taidu. He really was a good person. Wait, two pre-celestial wood. Chapter 466. The plain-looking nether domain master smiled warmly. He cupped his hands together and bowed. Fellow Taoist Westgate, I apologize for today, but my immortal sect has won. Solitary Westgate had discovered the pre-celestial wood and used Kong Mingxiao to inform Qin Yu. The immortal sect could also send a representative to snipe him. This was considered a normal battle. Victory or defeat depended on their own methods, and no one could say anything. Humph! The immortal sect is rich and overbearing. I am naturally inferior to you. But the junior you chose is far too rampant. Does he even place me or the Tao Arena in his eyes? Solitary Westgate's complexion was grim. The Nether Domain Master's smile became even brighter. This junior has just grasped power and wealth, and his ego is inflated. With fellow Taoist Westgate status, there's no need to lower yourself to his level. He lifted a hand and tore open space. Looking through the crack, one could see a complete spirit stone vein within. I inadvertently obtained this spirit stone vein. Today, I will gift it to fellow Taoist Westgate as an apology on behalf of Qi Chung. Solitary Westgate lifted a hand, and the spirit stone vein rumbled as it flew up. It rapidly shrank and submerged into his hand. With a cold snort, he vanished from sight. The Nether Domain Master revealed a gloomy expression. After several breaths of time, his body shattered, turning into motes of starlight that scattered away. Immortal Sect. The Nether Domain Master's true body opened his eyes. Something is wrong. The Buddhist nation sovereign's voice was faint. Of course not. Just how difficult is it for the soul summoning bell to recognize a master? It is suppressed and rejected by the world. Yet a junior like Qin, you managed to encounter the pre-celestial wood. If it weren't for us interfering, he might have already completed the process. The Nether Domain Master's face was cloudy and uncertain. Could this be the will of the heavens? Even the will of the world itself cannot obstruct it. Humph! There is no such thing as the will of the heavens in this world. Everything has to be fought for by oneself. You and I have cultivated to this point, and yet you still can't see through this? The Buddhist nation sovereign's eyes were cold. Taking 10,000 steps back, even if Qin Yu is the will of the heavens, I will still knock him into the dust. I must obtain the soul summoning bell. The Nether Domain Master sighed. Unfortunately, Qin Yu wasn't fooled. If he had attacked Qi Chung, things would have been much simpler. The Buddhist nation sovereign lightly said, Qin Yu is not a fool of his generation. Otherwise, how could he have his current achievements? Whether it is the ancient perishment decree or the sea-breaking Sea King bead, both are more than enough to prove how outstanding he is. If it's possible, I'm willing to spare his life and guide his soul to the Buddhist kingdom so that he can become my servant. The Nether Domain Master shook his head. It is too early to say such things. As long as Qin Yu stays in Four Seasons City, there is nothing you or I can do to him. He continued to say, when I led the Tao Arena Master to attack just now, even though he hid his aura, I could still feel that Solitary Westgate has become much stronger. The Buddhist nation sovereign's voice was cold. So what? If he obstructs me from obtaining the soul summoning bell, I will not hesitate to fight him. The Nether Domain Master revealed a worried expression. But at this time, his eyes flashed, and he looked up at the void in front of him. Space rippled, and a black-robed phantom appeared. In Four Seasons City, another pre-celestial wood has appeared. What? The Nether Domain Master shouted out loud. If mentioning the will of heaven just now was only a momentary sigh, then right now, there was an incomparably intense feeling of déjà vu, something like the pre-celestial wood had basically vanished from the world. Even in the immortal sect, there wasn't a single one of them left. But in a tiny four-season city, two had appeared in succession in such a short period of time. To say that this had nothing to do with Qin Yu was a bit too far-fetched. The Buddhist nation's sovereign clenched his teeth, slowly squeezing out each word. Seize the pre-celestial wood at all costs. I want to see whether or not the so-called will of heaven can be broken. Good. The black-robed phantom dissipated. Whoosh! The Buddhist nation's sovereign stood up. I will personally make a trip. The nether domain master frowned. Solitary Westgate is there. If you descend, I fear there will be a conflict. The Buddhist nation's sovereign shook his head. You don't understand. Ever since I learned of the existence of the soul-summoning bell, there's been a faint connection between me and this treasure. The nether domain master hesitated for a moment. I will go with you. Good. Shwa, shwa. The two of them vanished at the same time. Time was pushed back 2 hours. Four Seasons City, Tao Arena's training room. Qin Yu summoned Undying and handed him a jade box. With your methods, it should be easy for you to hide your aura and not be detected by others. Bring this item to the entrance of the auction house, and I will be there soon. As for the rest, you can act as you see fit. Undying opened the jade box. After a single glance, he fell silent. After several breaths of time, without a single word, he cupped his hands together and left. Looking at his departing back, Qin Yu couldn't help but frown. He felt as if this fellow had become different from before. Today might be the greatest chance in his life to make a fortune. He couldn't afford to mess up his plans. In truth, Qin Yu was worrying too much. The current Undying was far more reliable than he had ever been in his life. The will of heaven. Damn it, I thought this was just a joke, but I never thought it would actually exist. I'm also lucky enough to encounter it. Undying muttered to himself. Great waves tumbled in his heart. After a long time, he clenched his teeth and roared out, I'll risk it. I'll make a bet. Qin Yu, you must not disappoint me. Once he made his decision, he felt his entire body relax. Undying's footsteps quickened. Kong Mingxiao stopped in the distance. He looked at the black-robed figure walking out of the training room. At first he didn't care, but soon he frowned and his eyes became dignified. After looking for a bit longer, his dignified expression became a bit more bewildered. He actually couldn't see through this person's aura. It had to be known that this was the Tao Arena. As the master of this Tao Arena, he had the support of the entire Tao Arena. Here, he could even fight a supreme being. But he actually couldn't see through this person's depths. This person either had an extremely powerful aura-concealing treasure on him, or his boundary was far above his own. Kong Mingxiao's mind tumbled endlessly. Why was there such a mysterious character in Qin Yu's training room? Before he could think too much about it, Qin Yu pushed open the training room's doors. As he saw Kong Mingxiao, he happily walked over. Arena Steward Kong, has the auction ended? Kong Mingxiao subconsciously said, Not yet. I left early to see you. Qin Yu smiled. That's good. I have a matter that I need Arena Steward Kang's help with. Kong Mingxiao nodded. Speak. In his mind, he was still thinking about the black-robed person that just left. He wanted to ask, but he was afraid that Qin Yu wouldn't like it, so he hesitated. Qin Yu said, I want to borrow spirit stones. No problem. Borrow spirit stones? Kong Mingxiao regained his composure. The item has already been won by Qi Cheng. Isn't it too late for fellow Taoist Qin Yu to gather spirit stones now? Qin Yu shook his head. It's not too late. It's just right. Kong Mingxiao didn't know what was going on. Seeing Qin Yu's confident smile, he hesitated for a moment and said, All right. May I ask how much fellow Taoist Qin you would like to borrow? Qin Yu coughed. As much as you have. Kong Mingxiao. Auction house. Qi Cheng brazenly took action, suppressing the young masters of the Zhao, Qian, Sun, and Li families, forcing back the illustrious Qin Yu. Then, he used 800 million spirit stones to obtain the mysterious withered branch, immediately becoming the focus of everyone's attention. After guessing his current status, the covetous looks in everyone's eyes faded away. All that was left over was awe and flattery. Even the high and lofty young ladies of the Zhou and Mu families couldn't help but glance at Qi Cheng, allowing his vanity to obtain the greatest satisfaction. Although Chi Chung didn't bid again in the following auctions, he was still the most eye-catching person in the entire audience. When the last item was auctioned off, Chi Chung was submerged in a tide of people. Countless flattering voices sounded out, causing him to smile. Many people that he could only look up to and carefully receive in the past were now smiling so brightly. So what if he was someone from the immortal sect? Even if the demonic path knew, as long as Chi Chung didn't violate any taboos, they would pretend they didn't see him. This was an unspoken rule that both sides had to abide by. Otherwise, the world would have already fallen into chaos. It took a great deal of effort for the auction house cultivator to squeeze his way through the crowd and respectfully offer a metal box to Chi Chung with both hands. After a brief examination, Chi Chung put it into his ring of holding and then took out a transparent crystalline spirit stone card. On the surface of the crystal card was a vivid and lifelike demon phantom. Its eyes seemed to flow with magma. This was issued by the demonic path and was the world's most precious and top spirit stone card. Each card had at least 1 billion spirit stones and was something that only almighty beings could possess. Chi Chung casually took it out. His appearance could be said to be bursting with arrogance. Everyone's eyes turned towards him. Awe. The skinny old man's head was lowered and his hands hung at his sides. He quietly stood beside Qin Yu, without the slightest bit of aura. When this card appeared, he looked up and swept his eyes around. It was like a bucket of cold water had been poured over their heads, causing everyone to shiver and their consciousness to sober up. Chi Chung smiled. There is no need to be nervous. I believe that all of you fellow Taoists here won't have any other thoughts towards me because of a mere spirit stone. He cupped his hands together. Everyone, I still have important matters to attend to today. When I have some free time in the future, I will hold a banquet to invite everyone. I hope that everyone will come. His words immediately drew a response. Several charming female cultivators had watery eyes that were so sweet that they could drown a person to death. It was clear that as long as Chi Chung wanted to, all he needed to do was beckon his finger and they would climb onto his bed without hesitation. Ha ha ha! With a carefree laugh, Chi Chung put away the spirit stone card. The cultivators of the auction house respectfully bowed to him and then walked out. A group of people crowded around him. Countless awe filled their eyes. It was an awe-inspiring sight. Outside the entrance of the auction house, it was a rare day of good weather. Bright sunlight sprinkled down from above. As Chi Chung walked out, he subconsciously narrowed his eyes. Then, he was attracted by a striking darkness not too far away. Wonderwood, freshly cut wonderwood. The stubble is still wet. Everyone, don't miss this chance. The coarse cries were extremely grating to the ears in the crowd. This grating also meant that people were paying attention to his stall. At this time, there was already a circle of cultivators surrounding his stall. Every time there was a large-scale auction, many cultivators would set up stalls and wait outside. They hoped that their treasures would catch the eye of some noble person and be sold for a good price. This could be considered a common custom. What? You ask me what's so magical about this wood? Please open your eyes wide. If this wood is placed under light, it will be bathed in a curtain of darkness. If it is bathed in darkness, it will automatically release light. Look again, these beautiful and brilliant colors, these patterns that leave one mesmerized. This is simply a natural work of art. As Chi Chung heard this, his smile stiffened. The flattering voices around him had already vanished. As everyone walked out from the auction house, their complexions became incomparably strange. Not too long ago, they had just witnessed a fierce competition between several young masters who were jealous of each other. In the end, this had led to a sky-high price. But none of this was important. What was important was that the withered branch that Chi Chung had just won seemed to have attributes that were similar to what the seller had described. Suddenly, an excited voice echoed out from the crowd. I want this piece of wood. Chi Cheng's eyes widened. This voice. Qin Yu. He pushed away the charming female cultivator that was trying to burrow into his body. Then, he shot forwards like an arrow. The skinny old man reacted even faster. Like a shadow, he instantly crossed space. As for those that blocked his path, they were sent flying in all directions. Hold on, I'm also interested in this piece of wood. Looking at Qin Yu's panicked, angry, and resentful eyes, Qi Cheng felt a great satisfaction in his heart. So what if you are a peerless, proud son of heaven recognized by the world? Today you will still be trampled beneath my feet, and twice at that. Qi Cheng, don't go too far. Qin Yu roared out in a low voice. Qi Cheng brightly smiled. I'm bullying you. This piece of wood is right here. If you want it, just make a bid. He turned and looked at the black-robed stall owner. He lightly said, no matter how high the bid is, I will give you more spirit stones. This piece of wood is mine. As everyone walked out from the auction house, they looked at Qin Yu with sympathy in their eyes. To be smashed to such a state with spirit stones, he must have been aggrieved to death, right? But just what was this piece of wood? If both Qin Yu and Qi Cheng wanted it, then it definitely wasn't simple. Pre-celestial wood. From the crowd, someone suddenly cried out in alarm. That person's eyes widened with excitement. That's right. It is this strange object. I only happened to read about it in an ancient book. I never thought I would have the chance to see it again in my life. Not many people knew what pre-celestial wood was, but most of the people here knew that Qin Yu had been searching for this object for the past several months. Moreover, in these last 2 months, he had raised the bid higher and higher. But, in the end, he hadn't found anything. Qi Cheng faintly smiled. Facing everyone's eyes, he flipped his hand and took out a silver metal box. After opening it, a withered branch was revealed. He took it out and exerted a bit of force. With a cracking sound, the black layer of carbon on the branch broke apart and fell to the ground, revealing its true appearance. A circle of darkness rippled out, submerging Qi Cheng's hand. The dazzling colors and the exquisite and mystical textures were exactly the same as the wood on the stall. That's right, this is pre-celestial wood. Qi Cheng smiled and looked up. Qin Yu, you really want it, right? But I won't give it to you. Do you feel uncomfortable? Haha, but right now, I feel extremely happy, unprecedentedly happy. Qin Yu's face flushed red and his body shivered. One could see blue veins sticking out on his neck. It was clear he was on the verge of exploding. Qi Cheng's eyes narrowed, and he laughed even louder. Are you angry? Hit me. Are you trying to steal it from me? Aren't you fierce? Why don't you dare to attack me? Fellow Taoist Qin Yu, don't be impulsive. Kong Mingxiao said in a low voice. But there wasn't much worry in his eyes. He looked at the black-robed man and then at Qin Yu. Finally, his eyes fell on Qi Cheng, and a strange light flashed in his eyes. Qin Yu closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Arena Steward Kong, I need to borrow some spirit stones from the Dao Arena. The amount will be quite large. I wonder if you can agree? Kong Mingxiao didn't hesitate. Fellow Taoist Qin Yu is the Dao Arena's most important guest. Borrowing spirit stones is no problem at all. Good, Qin Yu roared. Qi Cheng, let me see just how many spirit stones your master is willing to throw at a dog. Qi Cheng's lips curled up. A dog is good. If it's obedient, it will have meat to eat. It's better than being chased to the ends of the earth and finally being slaughtered. He licked his lips. Qin Yu, perhaps if you die, I might even be able to get a piece of meat on your bone. Qin Yu clenched his teeth. 1 billion spirit stones. Give me the pre-celestial wood. The stall owner was clearly frightened silly by the scene in front of him. As he heard these words, he shivered. His eyes brightened, and he nearly jumped up from the ground. What are you panicking for? You want to take away the pre-celestial wood with a mere billion spirit stones? Dream on, Qi Cheng lightly said. 1, 5 billion. 2 billion. Qin Yu's eyes turned red. He didn't hesitate at all. 2, 5 billion. Qin Yu roared. 3 billion. At this time, regardless of whether they were ordinary or noble, everyone was scared silly. They had seen many people with many spirit stones, but they had never seen someone who treated spirit stones like child's play. 3 billion spirit stones. Even if they were extremely wealthy, for a mere stalk of spirit wood, well, even the incomparably precious pre-celestial wood wasn't worth this price. They were insane. These two madmen. The stall owner was clearly scared silly. He instinctively held onto the pre-celestial wood in his arms, wild joy and fear interweaving in his eyes. He clearly knew that although the bidding price was terrifying, he still didn't have the life to spend such a massive amount of wealth, even if he could obtain it. But this was how people were. Even though they were clearly terrified, their greed and desire were still driving them. They stared at these two people, hoping that they could put forth a higher bid. Chi Chung paused. He suddenly said, "Anyone can speak empty words. Since this is a bidding war, you naturally have to put forth enough chips." He flipped his hand, and 4 crystal demon spirit stone cards appeared in his palm. "Here are 4 billion spirit stones. Qin Yu, do you still dare to increase the price?" Qin Yu's body shivered. He pinched his thigh to maintain a pained expression of grief and indignation. He took a deep breath and turned to look at Kong Mingxiao. Arena steward Kong looked at him and then at the unassailable black-robed man on the ground. He observed 3 seconds of silence for the high-spirited Chi Chung. He hesitated for a moment and then said, "With my status as the steward of 4 Seasons City's Dao Arena, I can vouch for fellow Daoist Qin Yu that his bid is true and valid." Chi Chung laughed. Arena steward Kong indeed has the qualifications to vouch for him. But I wonder how many spirit stones a Dao Arena branch division can take out? Kong Mingxiao sneered. "Humph, more than you think." Chi Chung turned around. "I don't have enough spirit stones." The skinny old man didn't say a word. He flipped his hands, and 2 stacks of crystal cards appeared in the demonic light. Each one was a demon crystal card of the highest grade. Gudong. Several cultivators found it hard to breathe. Their eyes rolled back and they fell to the ground. But no one laughed at them, because everyone's field of vision had turned black and their hearts felt as if they were being grasped by invisible hands. Just how many spirit stones was this? Although everyone knew that the immortal sect had stood tall in the world for endless years and their background was bound to be astonishing, this heroic spirit was still hard to bear. Chi Chong flicked his sleeves, and the spirit stone cards in the skinny old man's hands fell to the ground. "Give me the pre-celestial wood, and all these spirit stones will be yours." He looked up, a taunting look in his eyes. "Of course, Qin Yu, you can continue to increase the price. I don't care if you use spirit stones to ruthlessly step on me beneath your feet." Qin Yu's face flushed red. He glared at Chi Chung. "Haha, Qin Yu, it looks like this pre-celestial wood will belong to me." Chi Chung sneered. "Now, you can give me the pre-celestial wood." The stall owner's fingers trembled as he handed over the pre-celestial wood. Then, with lightning speed, he picked up all the spirit stone cards on the ground and rushed out of the crowd. His movements are fast, but with such a massive pile of spirit stone cards and nearly 10 billion spirit stones in wealth, it was enough to cause countless cultivators to turn red with greed and take risks. Quietly, over a dozen figures chased after the stall owner. There were bound to be more hidden. Chi Cheng's smile was warm, because he knew that there were definitely people from the immortal sect among them. Spirit stones were good things, but if one didn't know when to retreat and took something they shouldn't take, then all that awaited them was death. Chi Chung played with the pre-celestial wood in his hands. He looked at Qin Yu and said, "Qin Yu, perhaps you can try begging me. Perhaps my heart will soften, and I'll give you a piece of pre-celestial wood. After all, I have 2 right now, and I can't use them all." Qin Yu remained calm as he heard this. He even revealed a smile, a completely different expression from just now. As this expression fell into Chi Cheng's eyes, his heart skipped a beat. He immediately cursed Qin Yu for trying to play tricks on him. The calmer he appeared, the angrier he would be in his heart. "Chi Chung, do you think that my calmness right now is just an act and that I am actually very, very angry and want to tear you to pieces? But I'm sorry, I really am not angry right now. On the contrary, I am very happy." Qin Yu paused for a moment and then suddenly said, "You and your honorable master are both good people, really." After he finished speaking, he smiled. Then, he left behind the dumbfounded Chi Chung who had been given the good guy card. Kong Mingxiao looked at Chi Chung with a strange expression. He shook his head and said, "I hope that your master will be a bit more benevolent towards you." Chi Cheng's complexion paled. His intuition told him that something was wrong, But as he looked at the two pieces of pre-celestial wood in his hands, he took a deep breath and suppressed all his thoughts. Humph! What a crafty plot. Did Sheen you want to mess up his plans and play some more tricks? It was useless. As long as he could stop Qin Yu from obtaining the pre-celestial wood, then no matter what price he had to pay, he would only be rewarded with merit. Moreover, the immortal sect had paid 10 billion spirit stones. Would such a massive amount of wealth really be obtained by others? He feared that whoever had any thoughts towards these spirit stones would die. A black-robed vendor rushed into an alley. He turned his head and sneered inexplicably. Then, he melted into the shadows of a wall and vanished from sight. Whoosh, whoosh, two cultivators broke through the air and landed where the black-robed vendor had vanished. They swept their eyes around in alarm and anger, but no matter how they searched, they couldn't find any traces of him. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. Suddenly, an icy, cold voice sounded out from behind the two. "Where are the spirit stones? Hand them over." The two cultivators turned around to see a man with thick arms and callous eyes step towards them. Contrary to his tall and sturdy figure, this person didn't make the slightest sound as he walked. Their pupils shrank. The two cultivators who walked in the darkness all year round felt an intense threat coming from this person's body. They turned and fled without hesitation. Their speed was fast, but compared to the fist behind them, they were far too slow. Or perhaps this man had predicted their trajectory. When the fist fell, it was impossible for the two cultivators to dodge. Two muffled sounds echoed together. Large holes appeared in the chests of the two cultivators that had fled in different directions. Their corpses fell to the ground, their eyes still filled with horror. The callous man looked over the two corpses but didn't find anything. He couldn't help but frown. At this time, his complexion changed. He stepped forwards and the ground suddenly collapsed. Countless cracks spread outwards like a spider web. At the same time, a peerlessly tyrannical aura erupted from his body. Chapter 467. Doubt Arena. Kong Mingxiao clearly knew something, but he was smart enough not to ask. It wasn't easy to take advantage of the immortal sect, so it was best to be happy after obtaining benefits. As Arena Steward Kong thought about how the lofty and overbearing immortal sect had suffered such a loss at Qin Yu's hands, he couldn't help but smile. That idiot Shi Sheng. He was probably still feeling smug after hurrying over spirit stones to Qin Yu, right? After sending Kong Mingxiao away, Qin Yu sat in the courtyard of the training room. He frowned, a dignified look in his eyes. Even if Undying had mysterious abilities, he was still facing the immortal sect. He hoped that nothing would happen to him because of a momentary thought. He was indeed too young. Even though he had experienced so much, he still couldn't restrain his temper. After being provoked by the immortal sect several times, he couldn't help but want to retaliate. So what if he obtained 10 billion spirit stones? To the immortal sect, it wouldn't even tickle them. At this moment, Qin Yu regretted his impulsive actions. After obtaining the pre-celestial wood, he could have just directly constructed the soul-leading altar. Why did he have to complicate matters? Suddenly, the shadow beneath his feet wriggled. Qin Yu was overjoyed. He saw Undying's figure stretch out. He casually tore off his black robes and offered up his storage ring with both hands. "Little Master, the spirit stone cards are all here." Sensing the worry that still lingered on Qin Yu's face, the last bit of hesitation in his heart quietly faded away. "Did you encounter anyone from the immortal sect?" He was a master, so I killed him to help Little Master vent his anger." Qin Yu's eyebrows arched up. "You don't seem right." Undying smiled. "Isn't it good to be loyal? Let me remind you, Little Master, you don't have much time left. Are you sure you want to chat with me here?" As he spoke, he took a step back and melted back into the shadow. Qin Yu shook his head, suppressing these thoughts. Now really wasn't the time to investigate these things. The Black Stone Mountain had been trembling for the past 2 days, and undying monster ancestors could awaken at any moment. He didn't hope that after he gathered all the soul treasures, he would be delayed by his thoughts and cause all his efforts to go to waste. He turned and walked away. After several flashes, Qin Yu appeared in an extremely wide courtyard. The black stone mountain floated in the air, and the purple-back blue-wing ants were slumbering beneath it. One could clearly see ripples appearing on the surface of the black stone mountain, as if pebbles were falling into it. Qin Yu's eyes became dignified. With a flick of his sleeves, he sat down cross-legged and closed his eyes. In his mind, all the steps for the soul summoning bell to recognize a master appeared. Even though he had studied it many times, this matter was too important. He only had one chance, and he couldn't afford to be careless or make any mistakes. After going through everything in his mind one last time and making sure he hadn't missed anything, Qin Yu's eyes flashed open. There was a flash of light, and 36 different soul treasures appeared. The first step of the soul summoning bell's recognition was to build the soul guiding altar. 100 miles outside Four Seasons City, atop a low mountain, space seemed to collapse and distort, forming a temporarily isolated space. The Buddhist nation's sovereign and nether domain master stood with their hands crossed behind their backs. Their eyes fell on the distant Four Seasons City. Because of the distortion in space, this great city was a bit blurry in their line of sight. However, at this moment, both of them had serious expressions on their faces. Four Seasons City, which was nothing special in the eyes of others, was like a blazing flame in the eyes of these two people. It was wantonly spreading its own fire and heat, causing the heavens and earth to tremble. He is truly formidable. The Buddhist nation sovereign sighed with emotion. He was originally someone who should have died, and his destiny and aura should have been weak. So, how did he suddenly transform from a carp into a dragon and achieve the momentum to soar into the highest heavens? The Nether Domain Master had a solemn expression. It isn't just you and me who are puzzled by this question. Think about the demonic paths, blue sky, yellow springs. They used a supreme treasure and the power of samsara to make deductions, but in the end they came up empty-handed. The Buddhist nation sovereign nodded, but there was no fear in his eyes. Rather, there was a burning heat in them. Black-robed, you have walked through Four Seasons City for many days, so you should be able to clearly feel what is happening. What is your evaluation of solitary Westgate's current strength? Behind the two, the black-robed man lowered his head. He hesitated for a moment and then said, "This subordinate cannot evaluate." He paused for a moment and then continued to say, "Because from start to finish, this subordinate has never been able to truly feel the aura of the Tao Arena Master. If this subordinate were to say that he is unfathomably deep, then that would be the most appropriate." Unfathomably deep. The Nether Domain Master sighed. In this world, perhaps the only one that can be called unfathomably deep in front of you and me is him. The Buddhist nation sovereign smiled. Only like this can life have meaning. Otherwise, if you look at the world and bow down before you, even if you live for 1,000,000,000 years, you will only feel lonely. These words were pleasant to hear, but only he knew what he was truly thinking in his heart. The Nether Domain Master smiled, not saying anything more. At this time, the black-robed man suddenly looked up. His eyes flashed with surprise like lightning. "Two lords, one of my assistants in Four Seasons City, has just perished. If I am not wrong, he should be responsible for recovering the extra spirit stones that the immortal sect paid out." A sharp light burst out from the Buddhist nation's sovereign's eyes. To be called an assistant by the black-robed man, that in itself was a recognition of his strength. Have me investigate just who it was that dared to kill someone from my immortal sect in front of us. He lifted a hand, and a vast map of the territory appeared, rapidly expanding to reveal Four Seasons City. As the Buddhist nation sovereign flicked his sleeves, the map began to play back. The process of constructing the soul leading altar proceeded smoothly. When the last bit of pre-celestial wood turned into a stream of light and disappeared into a halo of rainbow light, it suddenly expanded and exploded. The phantom of a magnificent ancient blue altar appeared in the Tao Arena. The moment it appeared, an aura spread out and shrouded the entire cultivation room. In the eyes of the outside, Everything seemed normal, and there wasn't even any change in the aura. But a soul channel leading to a different world had already opened up inside. Qing took a deep breath. Without hesitation, his divine sense howled out and fused into the altar. In the next moment, he felt himself being sucked into a channel. Countless motes of light flashed in front of him. After an unknown period of time, the tearing strength that caused his divine sense to ache suddenly vanished. Shua, a boundless sea of stars appeared in front of Qinyu. It was magnificent, different from when he first entered the Nine-Realm Holy Land, as if there was an even greater aura of the vicissitudes of time. Before he could carefully observe it, a dark attractive force arrived from afar, wrapping around his divine sense and sending it howling deep into the sea of stars. Solitary Westgate furrowed his eyebrows. He looked up at the Tao arena and the courtyard that seemed normal. Just now, there was a slight fluctuation in his mind, but when he looked for it again, he couldn't find anything. Was he too nervous? Solitary Westgate shook his head, a helpless smile on his face. But as he looked at the courtyard, there was a bit of anticipation in his eyes. He was an intelligent person at the peak of intelligence. He could naturally sense something unusual from the immortal sect's actions. For instance, the struggle with Qinyu over the pre-celestial wood. The immortal sect was overbearing, and their strength surpassed all others in the land of divinity and demons. They had always acted in a bold and open manner. Even if they wanted to eliminate Qinyu as soon as possible, they wouldn't be so petty. Pre-celestial wood, it definitely involved some secret that he didn't know about. The immortal sect should have sensed something and didn't want Qinyu to succeed. Thus, they had no choice but to use such a method. Brat, in this part of the world, there are extremely few people that can make the immortal sect feel such dread. I am increasingly optimistic about you, so don't disappoint me. He couldn't move his divine sense at all. There were several times when he approached some incomparably pitch-black regions in the Starry Sea. Even though he was far away, Qinyu could still feel a fear that pierced straight into the depths of his soul. He didn't know what this pitch-black region in the Starry Sea was, but there was one thing he was sure of. If his divine sense entered, there would be no chance of leaving. Luckily, although it was a bit thrilling, this enveloping strength allowed him to avoid all true dangers. Moreover, as he went deeper and deeper into the Starry Sea, this strength became increasingly strong. Thus, he moved forwards even faster. In the end, it was so fast that Qinyu couldn't clearly see what was happening outside. He finally understood why this guiding strength would firmly imprison his divine sense. If it weren't for the protection of this strength, his divine sense would have been torn to pieces. He had gone an unknown distance into the Starry Sea, but he still hadn't arrived at his destination. As he thought about the monster raising mystic art and the world where the souls of nothingness existed, Qinyu's heart sank. It naturally wasn't simple for a supreme treasure of the heavens and earth to recognize a master. If one had sufficient time and a bit of luck, one could eventually gather 36 kinds of soul materials. But collecting the souls of nothingness was truly a test of one's character and luck. If one was lucky, they might be able to capture the souls of nothingness as soon as they arrived in this different world. But if they were unlucky, being able to escape alive was already a stroke of luck. Moreover, there was only one chance to enter this world. After an unknown period of time, there was a loud humming sound that shook his field of vision. When his divine sense recovered, he discovered that he was in an incomparably vast forest that stretched as far as the eye could see. Countless thick, ancient trees were like straight spears that pierced into the skies. Although it was only his divine sense, Qinyu could clearly feel the terrifyingly rich heaven and earth spiritual strength in this world. Taking in a single breath was comparable to taking in all of the purest spirit stones in the land of divinity and demons. If one were born here, perhaps even a pig could easily become a terrifying great monster. Suddenly, there was a heaven-shaking rumble from a distance. The ground violently shook. Wind started to blow in the air. But soon, Qinyu discovered that this wasn't wind at all. but the panting of a great beast. Yu believed that his will was firm enough, but his heart still skipped a beat. He never imagined that such a terrifying great beast would exist in this world. Its body was like a dark cloud that covered the sky. With every step it took, it would trample over several ancient trees that soared into the sky. The great earth trembled violently, and countless cracks were torn open. Its eyes were comparable to the stars, the sun, and the moon. Each strand of its hair could break apart a mountain. Its calm breathing was like the roar of thunder. Although Yu had made many preparations for the world beneath his feet, it was only now that he discovered that this world was far more terrifying than he had imagined. No, it was 100 times, 1,000 times, 10,000 times more terrifying. Luckily, this great beast didn't seem to discover Yu, who was even smaller than an ant to it. The earth quaked, and the mountains shook as it walked into the distance, finally vanishing from sight. Behind it, the ancient trees that had been trampled on began to crawl up from the ground. The damaged areas rapidly regenerated, not leaving behind a single mark. Soon, besides the countless fallen leaves on the ground, everything was restored to how it was in the beginning. Even the cracks in the ground disappeared. What a terrifying regenerative ability. But in the blink of an eye, Yu understood. If it weren't for such an astonishing regenerative ability, then no matter how powerful this world was, it still wouldn't have been able to withstand the destruction caused by the vicious beasts living within. Chapter 468. The Black Mountain Phantom seemed as if it could prop up the entire heavens. Even though it was separated by an endless distance, one could still clearly feel the terrifying, oppressive pressure it emitted. This was an oppressive and despairing aura that could only be produced when mountains and rivers were overturned, when the heavens and earth were collapsing. At this time, on this mountain, two giant beasts were fighting each other. Their angry roars were like 3,000 claps of thunder. Rubble flew everywhere, and it was as if the sun, moon, and stars were falling. Every drop of blood was like a lake of blood that smashed into the ground with a rumbling sound. Frightened by the battle between the two giant beasts, the monster beasts that lived in the mountain range fled in all directions. Even though their bodies were much smaller, even the weakest monster beast was tens of thousands of feet tall. Suddenly, with a heaven-shaking explosion, the Black Mountain Phantom shattered. Countless fleeing monster beasts were smashed into meat paste by flying boulders. The Black Mountain Phantom fiercely turned its head and opened its mouth, instantly swallowing up the two giant beasts that were fighting. The sound of chewing could topple mountains and overturn seas. Blood dripped from the corners of its mouth, like a river of stars toppling over from the highest heavens. It roared into the earth, forming a sea of blood in the blink of an eye. The Black Mountain Phantom laid down on the ground once more. With a heaven-shaking explosion, the entire world trembled. Countless terrifying canyons crazily spread out in all directions. But soon, the earth that was torn apart began to wriggle and restore itself to how it was in the beginning. The Black Mountain Phantom that lay on the ground began to secrete a layer of mucus. As this mucus came into contact with the air, it condensed into thick rocks. Wild winds swept up countless ancient trees, even uprooting them. Then, they were twisted into powder that sprinkled onto the surface of the Black Mountain Phantom. Then, these ancient trees began to germinate at a speed visible to the naked eye. They turned into thick saplings that wildly absorbed nutrients and wildly grew. Perhaps in just several days, this place would return to how it was in the beginning. The surging river was like a moving sea. Terrifying willow trees that were hundreds of thousands of feet tall and emitted a radiant divine light relied on their incomparably thick roots to drill deep into the earth, anchoring their bodies to the banks of the river. But today, these incomparably sturdy and terrifying willow trees were easily smashed apart by the waves of water. They were even uprooted from the banks of the river, leaving behind terrifying pits that were hundreds of miles wide. In the next instant, these pits were filled up by the river water. A huge golden fish was swimming in the long river. It was so huge that the river water couldn't even completely submerge its body. The fins on its back seemed to be made of pure gold, and under the illumination of the light, they reflected billions of rays of divine light. Every time the large fish's body swayed, the entire river would release a pained gasp, and then it would stir up raging waves that could destroy everything. The river in front of them suddenly narrowed, and the big fish that were barely able to pass through were blocked. A roar came from the water, and a terrifying whirlpool appeared, sucking up all the water in the river. The surging river was cut in half at this moment, revealing the head of the golden fish. It was a majestic dragon's head, and its golden eyes were cold, shining with endless nobility and majesty. It opened its mouth and sucked in the river water, turning it into a column of water that shot out. The earth trembled, and the narrow river was directly smashed apart. The golden fish hid underwater. It wagged its tail and continued forwards, not caring at all that the river had been torn apart. Endless river water roared out, instantly submerging 1,000 miles. After entering this different world for half a day, Chinyu's outlook on life had been completely refreshed. This was simply a land of divinity and demons that had been magnified 1,000 times, or even 10,000 times. This magnification referred to everything that existed in this world. Had he seen ants that were dozens of feet long, toads that were 1,000 feet long, birds that were 10,000 feet long, or wild boars that were 100,000 feet long? Here, they could be found everywhere. Chinyu had even seen a terrifying giant ape that carried 3 heads on its shoulders. Its feet stepped on a mountain range, its head stretched into the heavens, and half of its body was hidden in the clouds. Every breath it took had the momentum of wind and thunder. Luckily, Chinyu's tiny divine sense was like a grain of sand in the Ganges River. In addition, whenever he saw a bad situation, he would run away, so he was just barely able to survive until now. But the problem was that luck couldn't be relied on. Perhaps a sudden accident could send him beyond redemption. This accident could be the sudden gasp of a giant beast, or even an ant that suddenly developed a desire to hunt. In short, Chinyu didn't want to stay in this world for even a second longer. This sort of environment where death could be lurking around every corner was enough to leave one in despair. But there was still no trace of the souls of nothingness. This left Chinyu restless because, according to the records of the monster raising mystic art, the souls of nothingness should be as common as carp in a river. They could exist in any corner of this world, and as long as one's luck wasn't too bad, they could be quickly found. This sort of soul of nothingness didn't have any offensive ability. As long as one approached, they could be captured, and then they could stimulate the power of the soul, leading Alter to leave this world. Half a day passed. By relying on the speed of his divine sense, Chinyu crossed an inconceivably vast territory. But he still didn't find a single soul of nothingness. This clearly wasn't right. Just what happened? Chinyu whispered to himself, a look of anxiety in his eyes. The strength of the soul leading Alter could only be maintained for a single day. In other words, if he couldn't find a soul of nothingness in the next half a day, he would have to leave. Once he left, his divine sense's aura would be marked by the will of this different world. If he tried to come here again, he would be erased by the worlds well before his divine sense could enter. This was why it was said that every person only had a single chance to enter this different world. If they failed, it would be impossible for them to complete the soul-summoning bell's recognition process. Rumble, rumble. A terrifying explosion spread out. Chinyu's complexion changed. His divine sense instantly swept away, avoiding an eagle that flew over his head. This eagle had pure white feathers, and its wings blocked out the skies. Perhaps the legendary rock referred to this sort of life form. It fled far away before Chinyu's divine sense came to a stop. He bitterly smiled. This terrifying eagle might not care about his existence at all, but the strong winds stirred up by the flapping of its wings could easily tear his divine sense to shreds. This wasn't a supernatural ability. Rather, when its wings flapped, it naturally stirred up strong winds. Because the strength surpassed the limit, There was a qualitative change that could still destroy divine sense. Suddenly, a shrill cry echoed out from the distance. Chinyu looked up, and his pupils shrank, endless shock filling his face. He saw that the incomparably handsome giant white eagle that was shaped like a rock had its body pierced through by a sharp thorn. It frantically flapped its wings in panic, but it couldn't escape the shackles of the sharp thorn. With a mournful cry, the giant white eagle's massive body was mercilessly pulled towards the ground. There was a heaven-shaking rumble in the distance, followed by the sound of food being eaten. Chinyu paled. Although he hadn't been in this different world for long, he had gained some experience. This giant white eagle had cultivated to a high level. Even in this terrifying different world, it could be considered an extremely tyrannical existence. But it hadn't been able to resist at all. It had been killed by a sharp thorn and swallowed up. According to Qin Yu's understanding of this world, the more tyrannical a creature was, the larger it was. To be able to easily kill a giant white eagle. Qin Yu's divine sense shivered. A feeling of extreme fear gushed out from the depths of his heart. He wanted to flee, but at this time, a boundless aura erupted from the depths of the earth. Beneath this aura, his divine sense froze, and he couldn't even think. Soon after, the earth beneath him shattered. A black mountain peak rose up from the ground, lifting Chinyu into the heavens. A halo of light appeared, blocking out all the strong winds. The terrifying pressure that Chinyu felt with his divine sense disappeared. After regaining his ability to move, Chinyu looked around. His mouth fell open, his mind rumbling as he fell into a complete blank. Countless black spots spread out in all directions, as uneven as hills. But the true appearance of these hills was actually layers upon layers of scales. He was now standing on the back of an incomparably massive spider. It had awoken from its deep slumber, its 8 massive limbs tearing through the earth. He didn't know if there were any larger creatures in this different world, but the spider beneath him was the most terrifying existence he had seen so far. Even the 3-headed ape on its shoulder or the giant golden fish swimming along the river were nothing but unremarkable little brothers in front of it. A single limb was enough to skewer 10 of them together. Its compound eyes were densely packed, flickering with a cold luster of intelligence like neatly arranged stars. After determining the direction, the terrifying spider moved its limbs, leaving a series of bottomless holes on the ground as it moved away at an astonishing speed. Majestic mountain ranges and surging rivers flashed beneath its belly, unable to obstruct it in the slightest. Countless powerful monster beasts fled into the distance in panic. There was even a pangolin that was millions of feet long that screamed as it drilled deep into the earth. But soon after, a limb pierced into the earth. With a pained roar, the escaping pangolin was pulled out. It opened its jaws to reveal countless sharp fangs. It turned its head and bit down on the limb that had pierced through its back. There was a grating sound like stars colliding with each other, causing countless clouds of fire to splash out. Teeth fell to the ground, but none of them were able to cause any damage to the spider's limb. The limb was pulled back. The spider's eyes were cold and indifferent. Its jaws parted to the sides, revealing a mouth so deep that it seemed to lead straight to hell. Rows of sharp fangs wildly spun as its muscles moved. The entire pangolin was swallowed. As it swallowed, one could clearly hear the sound of flesh and blood being ground to pieces. It was deep and heavy, like the beating of a 100,000-foot drum. Qin Yu's divine sense instinctively shivered. This terrifying spider's strength had already broken through the horizon. He tried to escape, but although the halo was only a thin layer, its defensive strength was extremely terrifying. Even when he used all of his strength, he couldn't shake it in the least. Unless he galvanized the strength of the soul, leading altar and directly left this world, there was no chance of him escaping. Qin Yu's eyes darkened and his thoughts raced. Once he left, it would be impossible for the soul summoning bell to recognize him as its master again. No, He forcefully suppressed the fear in his heart and decided to wait for a chance. Perhaps he would soon find a chance to escape. Unfortunately, Chinyu didn't know that when the spider activated its protective strength, it meant that it was about to fight, and only an existence of the same level could cause it to be so cautious. 2 hours later, Chinyu finally saw the spider's opponent today, in the boundless sea region. This was a true sea, the sea of a different world. It was vast and endless, like the vault of heaven of a world above his head. A giant purple dragon lay there. Its body was so majestic that not even the sea water could submerge it. Its icy cold eyes stared at the spider that was rumbling towards it from the ends of the earth, as if it had been waiting here for a long time. Qin Yu's eyes widened. It wasn't that he feared this dragon's aura, but that he discovered that this giant purple dragon was actually composed of countless tiny individuals. Of course, this so-called tiny was only relatively speaking. Each of them was 10 feet in size, and they were like purple jellyfish. The tentacles on their abdomens twisted together, forming a giant purple dragon. At this moment, Qin finally understood why he hadn't found a single soul of nothingness even after entering this different world for half a day. It was because they were all gathered here. That's right, this incomparably majestic purple dragon in front of him was composed of trillions of souls of nothingness. Roar! The spider emitted an angry roar. The billowing sound waves turned into a tangible impact that swept out in all directions. Space collapsed and the earth shook. Great waves rose up in the boundless sea region. The eyes of the giant purple dragon, formed from tens of thousands of souls of nothingness, didn't contain the least bit of fear. It fiercely looked up and let out a resonant dragon roar. Chapter 469. The spider's eyes lit up like two burning suns. The imprisoning strength that had vanished reappeared. Suppressing Qin used divine sense to its scales so that he couldn't move at all. But this didn't stop him from witnessing the heaven-shaking collision that followed. He saw the spider lift a leg. Like a spear of a demon god from the highest heavens, it thrust into the sea's surface and nailed the dragon roar that tore apart the sea. The world fell silent. All fluctuations vanished. Time, space, light, darkness at this moment, everything lost all meaning. It seemed like only a breath of time passed, but also like a long samsara. Then, this tranquility shattered and the sea's surface exploded. Endless seawater shot into the skies, revealing the seabed covered with black reefs. Every drop of seawater contained an annihilating strength. They roared out in all directions, crushing all obstacles in their way. After being eroded by the waves for billions of years, the firm shorelines of a planet were as fragile as tofu. They were instantly torn apart. With just a single wave, the earth for thousands of miles collapsed. Then, it was filled with seawater, becoming a part of the sea. What followed soon after was a second and third wave. The tumbling seawater roared, crashing towards the earth. 5,000 miles, 10,000 miles, 30,000 miles, 100,000 miles. When the waves gradually subsided, the 100,000 miles of land that extended from the sea had turned into a kingdom of water. The spider's 8 massive legs supported its body. It stood in the sea, not shivering at all no matter how much seawater crashed against it. It stubbornly stared at the purple dragon, its eyes filled with icy, killing intent. Its roar was like a million peals of thunder. It opened its jaws wide and spat out a black net. This net was inconceivably large. It covered the entire skies, and on the surface of the seemingly tiny lines, black light flowed about, covering the purple dragon. The purple dragon lifted its claws. But at this time, the billowing waves that rushed deep into the sea were suddenly cut in half. A terrifying tentacle drilled out, seeming as if it could twist apart the stars above. Roar! With a loud roar, the purple dragon's body instantly split in two. One shot into the skies to meet the black net, and the other turned and plunged deep into the sea. As soon as the intense battle began, it entered a white-hot state of life and death. The purple dragon fell into the black net. It tore apart countless threads of the net, but in the blink of an eye, it repaired itself. The battle in the depths of the sea was much more intense. The giant octopus with hundreds of terrifying tentacles had entangled the giant purple dragon. The two of them tumbled in the deep sea, causing the sea that had just calmed down to boil again. Qin Yu's divine sense was imprisoned on the surface of the spider scales. As it moved at high speeds, he wasn't able to see the entire battlefield. But he was able to occasionally capture images of the giant purple dragon fighting 1 against 2, and it didn't seem to be at a disadvantage. However, this balance did not last for long. A fourth terrifying giant beast appeared in the sky. If the giant white eagle that was killed by the spider was said to be in existence comparable to the Kuan Peng, whose wings could cover the sky, then the bird in front of him was as boundless as the sea of stars. Looking at it with the naked eye, its body was even more terrifying than the spider beneath Qin Yu's feet. Its wings spread out, reaching as far as the eye could see. A golden eye peeked out from the clouds, locking onto the giant purple dragon. As for the spider that controlled the giant net and fought with the giant purple dragon, a trace of dread appeared in its eyes. It lifted up its legs and fell back down, retreating far away. The giant octopus in the deep sea emitted an angry roar, as if there was some sort of grudge between it and this terrifying bird. But whether it was the spider or the octopus, neither of them were able to cause the bird to shift its gaze at all. It stared at the giant purple dragon, its eyes gradually turning blazing hot. Roar! The two giant purple dragons roared together, their voices filled with anger and unwillingness. It was clear that it knew that it was impossible to resist 3 existences at the top of the food chain with its strength alone. This attempt failed again. It couldn't wait any longer. Otherwise, it wouldn't be long before the 4th great beast arrived. At that time, its chances of escaping would be greatly reduced. Bang, bang. The 2 enormous purple dragons self-detonated at the same time. Their shattered bodies tumbled in midair, wriggling as they transformed into purple dragons of various sizes, which roared and fled in all directions. The giant black net shattered, and 2 thick tentacles of the giant octopus were blown off. But joy appeared in the eyes of the spider and octopus. They opened their great mouths and sucked in. Immediately, countless purple dragons fell into their mouths. This was because the reason they had hunted the giant purple dragons with all their strength today was to wait for this moment. The giant bird circling above them didn't join in the struggle. Its sun-like eyes locked onto the entire sea region, searching for its target. The giant bird was confident that under its divine eyes, it wouldn't allow it to escape. But as time passed, it didn't obtain any harvests. Instead, after the spider and octopus swallowed a massive number of purple dragons, their auras became even more terrifying. It was clear they had obtained tremendous benefits. A sharp cry sounded out, transmitting an unquestionable will. The spider and octopus paused in their eating motions and immediately emitted angry roars, as if they were resisting. The giant bird's eyes revealed an icy chill. Then a brilliant divine light erupted. It fiercely flapped its wings, and the giant octopus in the deep sea was sent flying away. Several bottomless wounds appeared on the surface of its giant body. Even though its flesh and blood wriggled and rapidly regenerated, the blood that gushed out still dyed the sea red. The spider screeched. It lifted its 2 limbs and crossed them over its head. But in the next moment, its body sank down and its indestructible limbs broke off, causing a massive amount of yellow mucus to flow out. However, this mucus didn't fall into the sea. As it came into contact with the air, it rapidly condensed and turned into 2 new limbs. The octopus opened its mouth. This time, it didn't spit out a giant net, but a terrifying spike formed from countless tiny spikes that wove together. This spike shot straight towards the giant bird's abdomen. In the deep sea, the giant octopus's abdomen swelled up and then collapsed. Endless toxic black ink shot into the skies, raining down on the giant bird. It was clear that in the face of an even more powerful existence, the two great beasts had chosen to join forces. With an angry cry, the giant bird flapped its wings. Winds and clouds tumbled backwards, and strong heavenly winds descended from the highest heavens. All of the black ink was swept away by the winds. Then a sharp claw shot out, grabbing onto the spike that the spider had spat out and forcefully pulling it out. From a spider's mouth came a pained howl. A giant organ that looked like a nest was pulled out from its body. Blood gushed out from its mouth, and it staggered. Its 8 giant limbs crazily fell down as it fled into the distance in a sorry state. The giant octopus in the deep sea had already dove deep into the sea before this happened. The giant bird angrily cried out. As it saw that it couldn't chase after the giant octopus, it spat out golden flames from its eyes, striking the fleeing spider. Qin Yu's eyes widened. As he looked at the golden flames that swept towards him, his eyes filled with fear. He didn't doubt that the strength of these flames could directly burn his divine sense into nothingness. The spider screeched, as if it could feel the approaching danger. Qin Yu stuffily coughed. He felt his divine sense being crushed by the suppressive strength. Luckily, this process only lasted for a brief moment. The halo of light that covered the spider's body lasted for a breath of time before it was shattered. Flesh and blood flew into the air. Countless pieces of scales fell into the deep sea like fragments of stars falling from the starry skies. Qin Yu's divine sense felt as if it was being cut by knives. He stared helplessly at the increasingly approaching sea surface, fear and alarm in his eyes. The scale he was standing on had a piece of flesh attached to it. It was like a small island, and the collision that occurred when he fell into the sea was enough to pulverize his divine sense. Bitterness and unwillingness appeared in Qin Yu's eyes. But, without hesitation, he activated the strength of the soul-leading altar. A faint tremor appeared all around him. At this time, not too far away, a purple dragon that was running away revealed a look of shock and joy. It turned around and flew straight towards Qin Yu. When it was still some distance away, the purple dragon disintegrated, turning into countless souls of nothingness that fled in all directions. One of these souls of nothingness hurtled straight towards Qin Yu. Qin Yu's eyes widened. After a brief moment of astonishment, he was overjoyed. Looking at the approaching soul of nothingness, he quickly lifted a hand. A wisp of divine sense flew out, smoothly fusing into the soul of nothingness. Then, in the next moment, a rich golden light erupted from the soul of nothingness. It was like a sun had leapt out of the sea. Qin Yu's eyes widened. He thought this was bad. In the skies above his head, a heaven-shaking roar of anger echoed out. The great bird's eyes were filled with anger. It fiercely flapped its wings, and the heaven and earth's spiritual strength in the air rapidly contracted towards a single point. And the core of this force was Qin Yu. Looking up at the terrifying great bird in the skies, Qin Yu's eyes were filled with awe. This was a level of strength that he had never even touched upon. But there wasn't much fear on his face. This was because the strength of the soul-leading altar had already erupted. The space around Qin Yu's divine sense slightly twisted. It completely ignored the gathering heaven and earth spiritual strength and vanished from sight. The strength of the soul-leading altar used a loophole in the world's rules. As long as one was within the rules, it was impossible to stop it. The great bird's eyes widened with disbelief. After several breaths of time, it finally reacted. The thing it had chased after for so long had actually been taken away by something weaker than an ant. Its angry scream spread through 1 trillion miles of land. The entire sea began to seethe with waves that rose to the heavens. This was more than enough to prove just how angry the great bird was. After the distortion in front of him was restored once more, Qin Yu discovered that he had escaped from that terrifying different world and was rapidly shuttling through the sea of stars. Before he could sigh over his narrow escape from death, Qin Yu hurriedly searched around with his divine sense. When he discovered the slumbering soul of nothingness, his heart relaxed. He never imagined that he would be able to obtain a soul of nothingness at the last moment. This was truly a stroke of luck. Moreover, the color of this soul of nothingness was a resplendent gold. Qin Yu's eyes flashed. From the great bird's reaction, it wasn't hard to speculate that this golden soul of nothingness should be its goal. Although he didn't know what this golden soul of nothingness represented, it was clearly something good. Qin Yu had complete faith in the great bird's judgment and judgment. Suddenly, a violent tremor spread out, awakening Qin Yu from his excitement. In the sea of stars, there were countless pitch-black regions, like the gaping maws of monsters. He already knew of this, but now, these pitch-black regions seemed to have a great interest in him, as if they wanted to swallow him up. The reason the strength that wrapped around him trembled just now was because of the swallowing strength emitted from these pitch-black regions. Although he had successfully broken free, Qin Yu discovered that his speed had slowed down. It was clear that resisting the swallowing strength of the pitch-black star field had caused him to lose some strength. Golden soul of nothingness. Qin Yu's eyes were dignified. Everything had been smooth the entire time, but now there was a sudden change. It could only be because of this. Just what was this golden soul of nothingness that it could cause even the starry skies to give birth to a desire for it? Qin Yu took a deep breath and suppressed these thoughts. The most important thing right now was that the following journey would be the existence of the pitch-black star field. A single swallowing would cause his speed to slow down. If this happened multiple times, it might even cause the soul-leading altar to exhaust all of its strength. The consequences were self-evident. Qin Yu fiercely clenched his teeth. He had obtained this golden soul of nothingness through a tremendous stroke of luck, so he couldn't easily give it up. Unless it was the last moment, he wouldn't let go. Reality proved that Qin Yu's worries weren't unnecessary. On the way back, every pitch-black star field they passed would release a swallowing strength towards the golden soul of nothingness. Luckily, they were far away. The soul-leading altar's strength constantly trembled and eventually broke free. Whoosh! His divine sense entered the brightly colored channel. Qin Yu's taut heart relaxed. It was only now that he was safe. Soon, he would be able to return to the land of divinity and demons. The ancient blue soul leading altar violently trembled. Cracks appeared on its surface. It was clear that its strength was nearly exhausted. Kacha! With a light sound, a chain reaction was triggered. The soul leading altar began to disintegrate inch by inch. The 36 soul treasures that formed it simultaneously turned to powder. On the ground, Qin Yu's body shook. His eyes shot open and he gasped for breath, his eyes filled with joy. Just a little bit more, just a little bit more. When the brightly colored channel shattered, his divine sense had staggered out. If he had been any slower, only the heavens knew what the result would have been. Chapter 470. The Black Mountain Phantom was in an extremely unstable state. The slumbering purple-back blue-wing ant had blood-red lines appear on its body, and it would twitch from time to time. The monster ancestors could awaken at any moment. Qin Yu didn't care about the weariness of his soul. He suppressed his excited mood, and his thoughts turned. The worn-out soul-summoning bell appeared. In the next moment, the slumbering golden soul of nothingness flew towards the soul-summoning bell on its own without needing to be stimulated. As it approached, the soul of nothingness constantly shrank until it turned into a grain of light that fused into the soul-summoning bell. Everything went smoothly. Before Qin Yu could even react, the process of recognizing a master seemed to have already been completed. The golden soul of nothingness was different from what was recorded in the monster-raising mystic art. Qin Yu subconsciously slowed his breathing and stared at the soul-summoning bell floating in front of him. Time slowly passed. The bell remained silent the entire time, without any change occurring. This caused Qin Yu's complexion to darken. Could it be that the golden soul of nothingness didn't meet the requirements to recognize a master? Suddenly, the soul summoning bell gently trembled. At first it was light, but soon it became intense. One could see the rust on the soul summoning bell rapidly falling off as traces of gold appeared on its surface. However, because the soul summoning bell was heavily damaged, the flow of golden light was clearly sluggish. But compared to before, it had become far more dazzling. Chinyu was overjoyed. He reached out a hand to grab it, but then a young and tender voice sounded out, "Take off your stinky hands. Don't touch me." Unfortunately, it wasn't able to display the threat it should have. Whoosh! The soul summoning bell drew back, creating some distance between it and Chinyu. Its eyes widened in astonishment. But before it could understand what was happening, the young and tender voice sounded out once more, this time even sharper and grating. "You scoundrel! You lecher! You shameless bastard! What are you looking at? I'm not wearing any clothes." His nose turned sour and his eyebrows tightened. Tears flowed down his cheeks uncontrollably. Then a golden light erupted. When Chinyu finally recovered his vision, the soul-summoning bell had vanished from sight. What appeared in front of him was a golden-haired little girl wearing a golden bubble dress. She looked to be around 5 or 6 years old, and at this time, her chubby cheeks were puffed up and her eyes were fierce. What the hell was this? It was completely different from what was recorded in the monster-raising mystic art. The little girl looked at Chinyu's stunned expression and lightly snorted. She arrogantly said, "Brat, I will give you a chance to turn over a new leaf. Become my servant and serve me with pious devotion. Perhaps I can pardon you for blaspheming against me." She widened her eyes and gritted her teeth. "Otherwise, just the fact that you're spying on me is enough to send you to the fire execution platform and burn you to ashes in the raging flames." Chinyu took a deep breath. His thoughts raced, and his complexion became strange. "You are the soul summoning bell. How dare you?" "Chinyu, do you want to die?" the little girl said in a domineering and spoiled manner. Black lines covered Chinyu's face. After a moment of silence, he said in a low voice, "Stop bluffing. I can sense that the soul-summoning bell has already completed its master recognition. In other words, no matter what you are, I am your master." The little girl's face paled. You can try. I'm not afraid of you." Although her words were like this, she had an expression that said, "If you were any fiercer, I would immediately cry in front of you." Chinyu rubbed his temples. "First of all, I saved you, right?" As he spoke, his eyes locked onto the little girl. She revealed a surprised expression that said, "How did you know?" And he immediately came to a conclusion. This little girl was indeed the golden soul of nothingness. The little girl bit her lips, not saying a word. Chinyu's complexion relaxed. "You see, I don't have any ill intentions. But you need to tell me just what is going on right now, so that there won't be any misunderstandings." To show his sincerity, he took several steps back. The little girl hesitated. This person wasn't easy to deceive, and his divine sense was within her body. If she angered him, she feared she would suffer loss. If the first path didn't work, then she would switch to the second. She blinked her eyes, instantly becoming pitiful. Her long eyelashes trembled as she displayed her cute and silly nature to the extreme. I didn't do it on purpose. I'm afraid. You really won't hurt me." Chinyu's smile was incomparably bright. "You have no idea how much effort I spent for today. Not only will I not hurt you, but I will do everything in my power to protect you." The little girl sniffled. "But I'm so tired right now. I need to sleep right now, otherwise my head will hurt a lot. If you have anything to say, can you ask me later?" She looked pitiful, although Chinyu knew that it was more likely she was faking it. As he looked at the little girl's expression, he couldn't help but nod. "Thank you." The little girl's eyes shined, a happy expression on her face. Her body turned into a beam of golden light that drilled into Chinyu's body. Chinyu's heart skipped a beat. He hurriedly probed his soul space and discovered the existence of the soul-summoning bell. With a trembling sound, he could faintly hear the little girl's surprised cry. He saw the purple moonlight rapidly gather towards the soul-summoning bell. The purple moonlight fused into the soul-summoning bell. The golden light that shimmered on its surface seemed to become even brighter. Qin Yu's soul opened its eyes and carefully gazed at the soul-summoning bell. According to the records of the monster-raising mystic art, after completing the master recognition process, he should be able to completely control this supreme soul treasure and obtain many benefits. But now, there was indeed a faint connection between him and the soul-summoning bell, although it wasn't strong. Luckily, this connection told Qin Yu that he was still the master of the soul-summoning bell. It was just that he had no way of obtaining the right to control the soul-summoning bell. His eyes flashed. All of this was clearly related to the golden soul of nothingness. It seemed that the extraordinary soul of nothingness that he had accidentally obtained wasn't necessarily a good thing. Qin Yu sighed inwardly. A thoughtful look appeared in his eyes. He had to figure out the current state of the soul-summoning bell as soon as possible. A treasure that belonged to him but couldn't be controlled was, strictly speaking, a hidden danger. Humph humph. Whether it's a hidden danger or not, you can think about it later. Since you're so easy to talk to, I'll remind you of something. There's an aura that is entangled with the soul-summoning bell. When I fall into a deep slumber, it will automatically cut off this aura. You had best be careful not to be killed by others. Humph humph. Once I'm free, I'll draw a clear line between us. I don't care how you die. Qin Yu was startled. He wanted to continue asking, but the golden light on the surface of the soul-summoning bell rapidly dimmed until it vanished from sight. He should be the only one who knew of the existence of the soul-summoning bell. But the immortal sect's interference in the pre-celestial wood had already caused Qin Yu to develop suspicions. In addition to the words of the little girl, Qin Yu's worries deepened. At this time, his heart skipped a beat. An extremely horrifying feeling came crashing down like Mount Tai, blotting out the heavens and covering the earth. Qin Yu stiffened. His heart seemed to be grasped by an invisible hand, nearly unable to beat. Endless fear rose up from the depths of his heart. A bone-chilling chill spread through his entire body, as if his blood would freeze. An angry roar echoed out from the horizon. Even though he was in the Tao Arena's training room, he still couldn't isolate it. Outside Four Seasons City, in a twisted and folded space, the Buddhist nation sovereign sat cross-legged, his expression indifferent. Above his head, a picture scroll unfurled. What appeared within was the scene of the immortal sect cultivators being killed. A hand stretched out from the shadows, seeming to represent endless darkness. But now, this darkness was being peeled away bit by bit. You cannot escape. I will find you. As the Buddhist nation sovereign muttered to himself, his lips curled up in a smile. Because at this moment, his heart, that was as calm as still water, was suddenly filled with a trace of excitement. Although he didn't know who the owner of this hand was, his intuition told him that after he caught this hand, there would be an unexpected harvest. But at this time, the picture scroll that floated above the Buddhist nation sovereign's head suddenly trembled. Then it burst apart like a bubble. The Buddhist nation sovereign looked up. His pure and tranquil eyes that were as indifferent as a god's began to fill with blood and turn crimson. An endless and cruel aura broke out from his body. The entire twisted space violently trembled. Then it was shattered into countless fragments by a terrifying strength. The mountain below instantly vanished from sight. What was destroyed along with it was the surrounding 10 miles of space. Everything was crushed into nothingness by the destructive strength of a volcano. The Nether Domain Master's complexion changed. Impossible for the Buddhist nation sovereign to lose his composure and erupt with such a terrifying killing intent. There was only one possibility. Something had happened to the soul-summoning bell, but the two pre-celestial woods were in the hands of the immortal sect. Qin Yu couldn't find the materials to construct the soul-leading altar, so how could he complete the process of recognizing a master? The Buddhist nation sovereign laughed. Impossible? What is impossible? The soul summoning bell has already completed its master recognition. The connection between me and it has been completely severed. Soul summoning bell, I have already lost it. It is impossible for me to obtain it again. It is impossible. His smile became even more brilliant. But as this smile fell into the eyes of others, it caused them to feel a chill run down their spine, as if evil spirits were howling within them. Chinyu, I believe that the second pre-celestial wood was deliberately sold by you. The death of my immortal sect, Cultivators, should be related to you. What a clever young man. You actually played us around in circles. I like you very much. I even wanted to receive you into the Buddhist nation and make you my servant so that I could bestow upon you unsurpassed good fortune. But why did you ruin the most important good fortune of my life? Why? Chinyu, tell me why. Puff, Chinyu spat out a mouthful of blood. His complexion was deathly pale. His ears still seemed to echo with the sound of his name. Just a single voice had caused him to suffer heavy losses. This sort of method far surpassed his imagination. Humph! A cold snort resounded through the world. All of the oppression that Chinyu had to withstand instantly vanished. He looked up and saw a figure appear in the skies. Although this figure wasn't too tall, it seemed as if it could support the world. The Tao Arena Master, Solitary Westgate. For some unknown reason, Chinyu relaxed. When he looked again, Solitary Westgate had already vanished from sight. Outside Four Seasons City, the Buddhist nation sovereign's eyes were blood-red. His boundless aura supported the heavens and earth, suppressing the world around him. Fellow Taoist Westgate, you want to stop me? Across from him, Solitary Westgate frowned. I promise you that I will ensure Chinyu's safety in Four Seasons City. Of course. The Buddhist nation sovereign smiled. Then allow me to experience just what boundary fellow Taoist Westgate's cultivation has reached after all these years. With a step forwards, trillions of Buddha phantoms appeared, each one loudly chanting, their voices echoing through the world. Solitary Westgate's complexion was solemn. He lifted a hand and grasped forwards. A resonant sword cry rang out, and a sword condensed in the void, grasped in his palm. Monstrous sword intent. It was like 1,000,000 immortals and Buddhas could be cut down with a single sword strike. The Nether Domain Master's figure appeared. He looked at the Tao Arena Master with a dignified expression. There was a flash of hesitation in his eyes, but it soon vanished from sight. Today's situation could no longer be reversed. It was impossible to persuade the crazy Buddhist nation sovereign. He had no other choice. Since fellow Taoist Westgate isn't willing to step aside, then together with the Buddhist nation sovereign, I will ask for guidance. Bang! The aura of a third supreme powerhouse shot into the heavens. Winds and clouds rolled up in the highest heavens, all of the clouds torn apart. Perhaps ever since Four Seasons City was established, the sunlight had never been as brilliant as it was today. But at this time, all living beings beneath this sunlight felt as if they had fallen into hell. Their minds were covered with fear and despair. When the strongest powerhouses of the world fought, the heavens would collapse and the earth would sink in. The sun and moon would lose all light, and trillions of lives would be exterminated as sacrifices. And today, they were the sacrifices. A shabby hatchet stretched out from space, quietly cutting open a door. Woodchopper Fu, who looked even older and was filled with the aura of decay, stepped out. Layers of wrinkles covered his face like shackles of a curse. With every movement he made, one could hear the creaking of his bones, unable to bear the burden. His mortal body had already reached its limit. If he wanted to continue living, he would have to change to a new, young mortal body filled with vitality, and he had already waited a long time for this mortal body. Looking outside the city, he could see that the entire space was twisted and it was impossible to clearly see anything. But the auras inside were clear, like 3 blazing suns in the skies. He was only a step away from this level. But even if millions of years passed, he still wouldn't be able to cross it. Woodchopper Fu's eyes revealed anger and unwillingness. But in the end, they turned into sighs. He straightened his back and slowly bent down. Then, he turned and walked into the city. His road had already been cut off. Now, the only thing he could do was continue living and live longer. Like a blazing sun, he would sprinkle down endless light and heat, obtaining awe and fear from all. This sort of thing should be left to the strongest powerhouses. Wasn't it fine as long as he lived on? With a deep chuckle, Woodchopper Fu's feet fell and his figure vanished. When he reappeared, he was standing outside the Tao arena. He gently sniffed the air. The ugly wrinkles on his face wriggled like a withered chrysanthemum. What a fragrant and rich scent of life. It is truly intoxicating. The shadow beneath Qin Yu's feet wriggled, and Undying walked out. He bowed and said, "Little master, the aura you wanted me to pay attention to has appeared once more." His attitude became even more respectful. Of course, he would never admit that this was because he had personally witnessed Qin Yu complete the process of the soul-summoning bell, recognizing him as master. "Was it you who discovered the person who tried to harm me?" Qin Yu's eyes flashed. Undying nodded. "Yes." Qin Yu thought for several breaths of time. "Do you have confidence that you can help me escape from his hands?" Undying smiled. Of course. This little master was truly intelligent, and smart people didn't die so easily. This was especially crucial. It left one feeling happy. Qin Yu's eyes brightened. He looked up at the terrifying aura billowing in the skies. Although he was grateful to the Tao Arena Master for his protection, placing his life and death in the hands of others wasn't Qin Yu's style. Moreover, this was his best chance to escape. If he could let his identity as Qin Yu die, then he would no longer have to face the pursuit of the immortal sect. Woodchopper Fu looked up at the tightly shut doors. As the Tao Arena's top training room, the defensive abilities of the array formations here were quite good. Although breaking through wouldn't be difficult, doing so would inevitably cause a great commotion. For a powerhouse, they would only need a single breath of time to arrive here. As he was thinking about what to do, the doors in front of him quietly opened. A black-robed Qin Yu walked out from the training room. As his eyes fell on Woodchopper Fu, he revealed a bit of surprise before immediately composing himself. He cupped his hands together and said, "Qin Yu greets Senior. Thank you for helping me several months ago, helping me expel the immortal sect's purple moon and allowing me to make a breakthrough in my cultivation." Woodchopper Fu chuckled. "It seems that there is something on your body that we don't know about. You were actually able to discover my arrival. You are truly extraordinary." As he praised Qin Yu, his eyes gradually turned icy cold. "Although I am curious as to why you dare to come out on your own initiative, my many years of experience have taught me that too much curiosity often leads to nothing good. So, since you want to thank me, how about using your body as a token of thanks?" As he spoke, he lifted a hand and grasped forwards. All fluctuations in space were locked in. An invisible strength rushed in from all directions. It was like a silent mountain that wanted to suppress Qin Yu. Qin Yu's eyes were filled with panic. Senior, what are you doing?" He flicked his sleeves, and there was the sound of breaking air. Countless beams of light cut through the skies like stars, howling towards him. Everything had been perfect, even smoother than he had expected. But if he wanted to escape, then his death had to be real. Thus, no matter who it was that came, Qin Yu had to force them to deal a heavy blow. Just imprisoning them was far from enough. With his cultivation, it was impossible to accomplish this. Thus, he could only rely on external objects. And Qin Yu just happened to have a hidden card in his hands that could achieve this goal. Qin Yu sighed inwardly. He couldn't help but sigh at the impermanence of the world. In the past, when he had spent so much effort to refine this superstorm flow, how could he have imagined that he would use it to commit suicide? Woodchopper Fu's lips curled up. "Brat Qin Yu, is this your hidden card? Although it is powerful, it is still far too weak for me." He lifted his hand, his movements not changing. He said in a soft voice, "Give me your mortal body." Before his voice fell, Woodchopper Fu revealed a look of anger. "What are you doing?" Bang, bang, bang. The entire superstorm flow began to wildly explode. The resulting destructive strength submerged Qin Yu's body. Before he was swallowed up by the distorted space, Qin Yu's lips curled up in a smile. Thank you very much. You are the third good person I have encountered recently. Rumble, rumble. A terrifying strength tumbled about. A ripple appeared in Woodchopper Fu's imprisonment of space. Outside Four Seasons City, solitary Westgate instantly sensed something. His eyes turned icy cold and he shouted out, Woodchopper Fu, you are courting death. Schwa. His figure vanished, and he reappeared in the skies above the Tao Arena. A terrifying aura descended like a starry sky, capable of submerging all. The Buddhist nation, sovereign, and nether domain master followed close behind. The two of them frowned and looked towards another corner. Black-robed stepped forwards. After a moment of silence, he said, although I'm a bit puzzled, it was indeed Woodchopper Fu who attacked. He forced Qin Yu into a desperate situation and finally caused him to explode his magic tool. He really died? The Buddhist nation's sovereign lifted a hand and grasped forwards. Faint traces of gray appeared. This was the aura of death. The nether domain master relaxed a little. Since Qin Yu had died, perhaps today's collision could be avoided. If so, then you would have to thank Woodchopper Fu. He looked over, and his lips curled up in a smile. Fellow Taoist Westgate, listen to this old man's explanation. Things are not like this. As Woodchopper Fu spoke, he slashed backwards with a hatchet in his hand. Space instantly tore apart, and he dodged in. Solitary Westgate was expressionless. He threw the sword in his hand forwards, and the healing space collapsed once more. In the distance, there was a pitiful scream. Whoosh! The sword entered his hand. Beads of blood tumbled down the blade. The nether domain master cupped his hands across his chest. Fellow Taoist Westgate, we bid our farewells. The Buddhist nation's sovereign turned and left, vanishing from sight with a single step. Black-robed, cupped his hands together, and turned into a phantom that fused into the world. In the blink of an eye, the world-destroying aura scattered away. The brilliant sunlight above his head was replaced by a trace of warmth. Solitary Westgate let go of the sword and it scattered. His eyebrows furrowed together, pain in his eyes. Qin Yu had died. Did this mean that his original calculations were wrong? That yin-yang and tranquil would never return? No, it couldn't be like this. There had to be something wrong. Solitary Westgate slowly swept his eyes around. His gaze finally fell on the training room's door. His eyes sharpened. With this brat Qin Yu's intelligence and cautiousness, why would he open the door on his own initiative before determining if he was a friend or foe? He lifted a hand and grasped forwards. Faint traces of gray appeared. This was indeed the aura of fresh death. No, this aura was wrong. Although it was similar, it wasn't Qin Yu's. Solitary Westgate's eyes brightened and he smiled. Good brat, you actually thought of using this chance to escape. Afterwards, you'll be like a dragon diving into the abyss. I knew you wouldn't die so easily. He hesitated for a moment and then pointed a finger at the heavens. A terrifying aura shot into the skies like a pillar, completely shattering the world's aura. Billowing waves of sound swept out in all directions, like endless thunder roaring. Brat, today I will help you erase all of your aura. Don't disappoint my expectations. I hope that the next time I see you, you will have the strength to impress me. 10,000 miles away from Four Seasons City, in the shadows of a mountain, a black lotus suddenly appeared. It quietly bloomed in the shadows, revealing Qin Yu's figure. Little master, I need to rest for some time. You must be careful from now on. Undying's voice sounded out in Qin Yu's mind before returning to silence. To conceal himself from the strongest powerhouses of the world was clearly an extremely difficult matter. In order for Undying to accomplish this, he must have paid a tremendous price. At the very least, the weakness in his voice was unprecedented. Qin Yu earnestly said, Undying, thank you. There was no response because he had fallen into a deep sleep. Chapter 471. Su Sheng's fear became a reality. For some unknown reason, the sect's investigation into Grandmaster Yao's whereabouts suddenly became more intense, and the number of interrogations in the dungeon rapidly increased. As one of the stewards, although he was the youngest, Su Shang still had considerable authority. After being allowed to participate in the interrogations, Su Shang's heart became increasingly heavy. He was well aware that secretly obstructing the progress of the interrogations and deliberately distorting the information was an extremely dangerous matter that could be exposed at any moment. But Su Sheng had no other choice. Although he didn't know the specific reason, the sect seemed to value Grandmaster Yao greatly. Once they discovered that he had disappeared, there was no way he could escape their wrath. If one often walked by the river, there would be a day when their shoes would be wet. No matter how careful Su Sheng was and how clean his hands and feet were, half a month later, his resting room in the dungeon was still brutally kicked open. The one who led in was the chief steward of the dungeon. His old face was taut, and he waved his hand. "Take him." Su Sheng's heart sank to the bottom of the valley. But on the surface, he was incomparably angry. "Old man, what is the meaning of this? I, Su Sheng, have always been respectful and filial to you. If I have done anything wrong, please point it out, and I will definitely change." The chief steward grinned, revealing a mouthful of yellow teeth. "You brat, you have always been smart. I originally thought that I wouldn't be able to suppress you in 100 years, but I never thought you would be so stupid." He paused for a moment, a mocking light in his dim yellow eyes. "We are all in this business. Others might not be able to see what you did during the interrogations, but you can't hide it from our eyes. Don't struggle and don't try to resist. Otherwise, you should know that I would be happy to see you killed on the spot." Su Sheng clenched his teeth. "Good. I admit defeat today, but I am loyal and devoted to the sect. I am not someone that can be casually slandered." No matter how afraid he was, without irrefutable evidence, he wouldn't relent. After staying in the dungeon for so many years, he had seen many things that he shouldn't have seen. He certainly understood what was the best choice to make. Leniency for those who confessed. Haha. Anyone who believed these words was an idiot. Su Sheng's robes were stripped off and thrown deep into the dungeon. His interrogation soon began. There was no lack of people hitting someone while they were down, much less the Black Demon Sect's dungeon, a place filled with filth and evil. The chief steward was a cautious person with extremely sharp eyesight. If he wasn't absolutely sure that Su Sheng wouldn't have a chance to make a comeback this time, he wouldn't be so ruthless. Since that was the case, there was nothing to worry about. Where there were people, there would be Jianghu. This was a very useless saying. Su Sheng was able to climb to the position of manager at such a young age. He had offended many people over the years, and most of the time, he had taken advantage of them. Now, retribution had come. He had tasted all the interrogation methods in the dungeon over the past few days. Other than his face being exceptionally pale, his entire body was still in shape. At least on the surface, he did not seem to have suffered any serious injuries. But anyone who knew how to interrogate someone would know that this kind of method, where no punishment could be seen, was the most terrifying. Su Sheng was not someone who could endure hardship, but he was even more afraid of death. He knew that once he spat, he might not live to see the sun the next day. Therefore, no matter how terrifying the torture methods were, he gritted his teeth and endured it. But he was also well aware that even if he could last for 3 to 5 days, there would come a time when his will would collapse. As an expert in this field, he didn't doubt this at all. There were people being tortured in the dungeon. Although they hadn't obtained a precise confession, the chief elder's patience had already been exhausted. The sect master had clearly warned him not to allow anything to happen to Yao Bin. If he delayed the sect master from eliminating this hidden danger, then, as the chief elder, he might not be able to bear the responsibility. Outside Grandmaster Yao's palace, a group of cold-faced cultivators arrived. They wore black robes embroidered with skulls, indicating that they came from the sect's punishment division. The dungeon was a place where people were imprisoned and interrogated. The punishment division was responsible for hunting down any group of evil dogs that violated the sect's rules. No one that was locked onto by them could escape. By the orders of the chief elder, We are here to investigate Grandmaster Yao Bin's residence. If anyone dares to stop us, kill them on the spot." With a cold shout, the punishment division cultivator waved his hand. Black robes flooded into the hall like a tide. Tuba and Tutu tried to stop them, but their strategy of playing the fool didn't work. Tutu's eyes turned red. Just as he was about to go all out, he was held down by Tuba, who slowly shook his head at him. The two barbarians allowed themselves to be captured. The search soon came to a conclusion. Yao Bin wasn't in the sect. A single stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. Although he had a bad premonition, when he finally saw the results, the chief elder's complexion paled. Tuba and Tutu were thrown into the dungeon and tortured together with Su Shang. There were also those that were taken in by Qin Yu, and there were also the ones that suffered the same fate. Unlike Su Shang, who refused to speak no matter what, after Tuba entered the dungeon, he didn't need to be interrogated before he confessed on his own. He helplessly said, "My family's Grandmaster, Yao, has some private matters that he doesn't want others to know about, so he secretly left the sect. But Grandmaster Yao said that he would pay a visit to the Demon Ascension Gate, so he will return soon." The results were soon delivered to the chief elder. He didn't dare to make a judgment on his own, so he brought the news into the Forbidden Land. The Black Demon Sect Sovereign was a dignified middle-aged man. He had a dignified appearance. "That is possible." The chief elder nodded. "I also think so. There is no reason for Yao Bin to flee the sect." He paused for a moment and then said, "Then how should we deal with those people in the dungeon?" Tai Chinchio smiled. Whether or not Yao Bin betrayed the sect, he left the sect without permission. First, lock those two barbarians in the dungeon. If he returns on time, then let them go. He didn't say anything else. It was clear that if Qin Yu didn't return, then there was no need for them to live. The chief elder hesitated for a moment. "Sovereign, there are already people that have taken a fancy to Yao Bin's wealth. Since he might return, should we stop them?" "No need. Since he made a mistake, he should be prepared to accept punishment." The chief elder bowed and excused himself. Tai Chinchio coughed. Blood tumbled in his chest, and his face flushed red. He took out a white handkerchief and wiped the blood from the corners of his lips. With a bit of strength, the handkerchief was crushed to powder that fell to the ground. "Demon Ascension Gate," he whispered, a cold intent in his eyes. When Su Shang was released from the torture rack, his complexion was extremely ugly. This was because he had already thought of the methods that Tuba could think of countless times. That's right, this excuse could ensure temporary safety. But the Demon Ascension Gate was about to open. If Grandmaster Yao didn't return in time, then everything would be over. "Are you crazy?" After being tossed onto the smelly withered grass, Su Shang struggled to look up, his face full of anger. Tuba lightly said, "You should know that if you continue to be tortured, even if you don't die, you will still be completely crippled." Su Shang clenched his teeth. "Being crippled is better than dying. We won't die." Tuba looked up, his expression incomparably calm. "The Grandmaster will definitely return before the Demon Ascension Gate opens." Su Shang didn't know where Tuba's confidence came from. It had to be known that it was already over 2 months late from the agreed date of return. Perhaps the Grandmaster Yao they were all waiting for had already suffered an accident. In the land of divinity and demons, anything could happen. Tuba's lips curved up. When this callous big fellow suddenly smiled, he gave off a particularly gentle feeling. "Don't worry, your performance this time was very good. Once the Grandmaster returns, he will definitely reward you." For some unknown reason, Su Shang suddenly calmed down a bit. He let out a deep breath and cursed several times. The moment his head touched the ground, he fell unconscious. Tuba took out a pill, opened Su Shang's mouth, and stuffed it in. Tuba felt a bit of heartache. "This is something that the Grandmaster gave us. Are we going to let him eat it like this?" Tuba lightly said, whether Su Shang did it to protect himself or for some other reason, his performance this time is enough to obtain the Grandmaster's approval. Thus, I must save him. Tuta didn't think much of this, but he knew that his brain wasn't as good as Tuba's. He shook his head, no longer speaking. "But There was a bit of worry in his eyes. Tuba, do you think the Grandmaster will return in time? Tuba's eyes brightened. Believe me, the Grandmaster will definitely return. In fact, when Shinyu returned to the Black Demon sect, 9 months had already passed since he left. From afar, he could see the entrance to the Black Demon sect appear in front of him. He let out a long breath and smiled. Although he didn't have much of a favorable impression towards this place, for a long time to come, he could only use Yao Bin's identity to travel the world. He lifted a hand and took out a set of black robes. Then, his figure flickered, and he soon flew to the entrance. As he verified his identity token, several Black Demon sect cultivators had strange expressions. Seize him! With a loud shout, 2 Black Demon sect cultivators attacked. Unfortunately, before they could touch Chinyu, they were sent flying backwards, blood spraying out from their mouths and noses. A guard roared out in anger. Yao Bin betrayed the sect and violated the rules of the sect. All disciples will be imprisoned. Do you dare to resist? Chinyu was silent for a moment. He lifted a hand and pulled down his black robes, revealing a young and inexperienced face. If someone who knew Chinyu were here, they would discover that this was the appearance he had before he obtained the little blue lamp. As his cultivation rose and his demon body became more successful, his appearance had undergone countless minor adjustments. He had become firm and handsome, completely different from his initial appearance. Even if someone who had seen Chinyu stood in front of them, they wouldn't be able to tell that they were the same person. His expression was light. His icy cold eyes covered the several Black Demon sect cultivators. Who said I betrayed the sect? Without bothering with the stunned guards, Chinyu entered the entrance to the Black Demon sect. His footsteps didn't seem fast, but in just a flash his figure had vanished from sight. As he passed by a breeding garden, Chinyu stopped. He looked up at the figure that was being stepped on the ground. Su Sheng, Chief Steward Su, when I was in the dungeon, you took good care of me. I fear you never imagined that you would fall into my hands one day. The owner of the large feet that were stepping on Chinyu's face was a thin and swarthy cultivator. He lifted up a nearby bucket of water and said, Are you hungry? I think I saw you just now, secretly eating something. If you were hungry, why didn't you tell me? Now that I'm letting you eat your fill, you don't need to thank me. The bucket of water was tipped over. The pungent smell of dirty water flowed down the boots and soaked Su Sheng's face. The swarthy cultivator and the several people around him laughed out loud. Bang! The bucket of water was tossed to the side. The swarthy cultivator rubbed Su Sheng's face several times and bent down. Steward Su, how can you be so wasteful when eating? You should know that our breeding garden provides meat for the entire sect, and we hate this sort of wasteful behavior the most. Someone bring a spoon and scoop it up from the ground. Feed it to our Steward Su. Su Sheng looked up from the dirty water and mud. He wiped his face with a hand and said, Brother, I was only acting on orders to follow the rules of the sect. Can't you be merciful and let me off this time? The swarthy cultivator laughed. Steward Su doesn't have much time left. If you don't have some fun, you won't be able to anymore. So, please forgive me. What are you standing around for? Hurry up and help. Steward Su is hungry. Hold on. Su Sheng shook his head. I've been in the dungeon for all these years, and for better or worse, I've accumulated some wealth. Besides the parts that have been divided up, there's also a portion that I've hidden away. I'll tell you where my wealth is, and you can spare me today. How about it? The swarthy cultivator's eyes brightened. Good. I'm warning you. You had best not play with me. As he spoke, he resisted the stench and leaned over. With a pitiful cry, Su Sheng was kicked away and knocked over a wooden fence. He violently coughed and spat out an ear onto the ground. He laughed, and his eyes were like those of a wolf. Your grandfather is here. If you have the guts, then kill me. The swarthy cultivator gripped his wound, blood dripping down his fingers. His body trembled with anger. Beat him to death for me. Su Sheng coughed and spat out a large amount of blood. But there was a look of relief in his eyes. Dying here today was better than returning to the dungeon. The demon ascension gate was about to open, and there was no news of Grandmaster Yao. The faith that Su Sheng had held onto for the last several months suddenly collapsed. That damn tuba. I must have been blind to believe your nonsense. Su Sheng looked at the several people rushing at him and cursed out loud. He closed his eyes, but the expected storm of beatings didn't arrive. With the sound of several heavy objects falling to the ground, Su Sheng struggled to open his swollen eyes. When he saw the figure in front of him, he froze where he was. Qin Yu looked at the extremely miserable Su Sheng and could feel his surging emotions. After a moment of silence, he smiled and said, "I'm sorry, I came back late." Through the purple light in his soul, Su Sheng already knew who Qin Yu was. His lips trembled, and then he burst into tears. There was no longer any trace of his previous ruthlessness and callousness. The swarthy cultivator saw that the situation was far from good. He turned and ran away, but before he could run far, a bucket of dirty water came howling over and smashed into his head. Qin Yu turned around. "How do you want to deal with this person?" Su Sheng's laughter was uglier than crying. "There is no need for Grandmaster Yao to worry. Just leave him to me." The twitching, dark-skinned cultivator trembled as he heard these words. Then he fainted. Qin Yu smiled. "If you want revenge, you must first live on." With a flick of his sleeves, countless streams of water gathered in the air. He threw Su Sheng in and washed him. Although he still looked miserable, at least the filth on his body was washed away. A palm struck his chest. Su Sheng stuffily coughed and turned his head to vomit. Black blood, mixed with blood clots, soon piled up. When he stopped vomiting, Su Sheng's breath was thin, but there was a bit more color to his face. Qin Yu fed him several pills and nodded. "He won't die. After resting for some time, he will be as lively as a tiger." Su Sheng struggled to bow. "Thank you, Grandmaster. I can guess even if you don't say it. I have implicated you this time. Once I finish handling the trivial matters, I will naturally compensate you." "All right, tell me roughly, what's the situation now?" Through Su Sheng, Qin Yu determined that Tuba and Tutu were locked up in the dungeon. Although they had suffered a bit, their lives weren't in danger for the time being. As for his residence, alchemy room, medicine garden divided by the sect, as well as the spirit plant materials he obtained from trading during this period of time, they had all been divided up by others. This was better than he expected. At the very least, no one had died. Moreover, in Qin Yu's opinion, this was a good opportunity. The Demon Ascension Gate was about to open, and this was the perfect time to build up momentum for himself. He would use these people as stepping stones for his rise to fame. He was confident in this. There was naturally a reason why he had been delayed for so long. On the way back, his path of metal had reached perfection, and he had already experienced the backlash of the demon body once. He wouldn't allow himself to make the same mistake again. He had suppressed his cultivation and obtained enough demon blood to upgrade his demon body. In addition, he had also stabilized his blue sea realm. This was the reason why he had been delayed until now. When he was at the Divine Soul Realm, he had been able to contend with a blue sea. Now that he was at the blue sea realm, did his strength still need to be mentioned? He lightly said, "You rest here. I will go take a look first and see just who it is that doesn't even give me a place to stay." Whoosh. Chapter 472. Yao Bin had returned. The chief elder smiled, his tense heart relaxing. Although the sect master hadn't made a big fuss about this matter, he was well aware of how highly the sect master regarded Yao Bin. If Yao Bin didn't return, the sect master would be enraged and countless people would die. Even he wouldn't be able to escape the blame. Luckily, this wouldn't happen again. Su Song hesitated for a moment. "Chief, Yao Bin's residence in the sect has been occupied by a disciple selected from the lower sect, Feng Changjing. Should we inform him to avoid any conflict?" The chief elder shook his head. "There is no need. Don't interfere in this matter. Just pretend you don't know that Yao Bin has returned." The sect master had detained 2 barbarians and punished Su Sheng, who was close to Yao Bin. Wasn't this all in order to solidify the fact that Yao Bin had violated sect rules? This was a rare opportunity. As long as Yao Bin came into conflict with others, there would naturally be a reason to pinch him. The sect master would be happy to see this happen. Su Song, has Feng Changjing's list of participants in the Demon Ascension Gate been reported? Su Song's heart skipped a beat. Because there are still 10 days until the deadline, it hasn't been reported yet. The chief elder lightly said, then reported. Grandmaster Yao's residence could be considered high quality even in the Black Demon sect. The main hall was built on a mountain, and there was a mountain spring that flowed down. It was led to the front of the hall by a waterway constructed from white jade, irrigating a verdant grassland. After careful repair and care, the grassland and several giant mulberry trees were particularly exquisite. Now, on this grassland, beneath the shade of the mulberry trees, there were over a dozen long tables scattered about. All sorts of exquisite delicacies, pastries, and fruits were placed on the pure white tables. At a glance, one could see that the materials used were extremely exquisite. Crystal cups were arranged in a wine tower, filled with deep red wine. Just a single sniff of the sweet fragrance was enough to make one feel carefree and happy. Of the 30-some young cultivators that had been invited to attend the banquet, besides a few that had reserved expressions, all of them had looks of praise and envy in their eyes. I heard that this was originally the residence of an alchemy grandmaster of the Black Demon sect. The standard of the palace was much higher than that of an ordinary elder. For fellow Taoist Feng to be able to live here, his methods are truly transcendent. A purple-haired cultivator lowered his voice, his words filled with envy. Another female cultivator covered her mouth and giggled. Who doesn't know that Feng Changjing has a big brother? In the last Demon Ascension Gate, he smoothly entered the demonic path. I heard that his talent is extremely fierce, and he was accepted as a disciple by one of the demonic path's elders. Now he has already reached the revered Blue Sea realm, and his future is limitless. With such a big brother, he will naturally be looked at in a new light. The scholarly white-clothed youth said, I heard that the Black Demon sect's alchemy grandmaster who originally lived here was an extremely fierce character. Because he left the sect without permission, he was punished. That is why this place became fellow Taoist Feng's residence. Some people say that this alchemy grandmaster originally intended to join the Demon Ascension Gate. If he were to come back and discover this, I fear there would be some trouble. Humph! What the Demon Ascension Gate tested was true strength. So what if one was an alchemy grandmaster? It had to be known that those that surpassed 100 years of age would have to face the demonic path's recruitment standards several times harsher. Even if this person came back with the current situation, I fear he would be like a clay bodhisattva crossing a river. Would he still dare to make things difficult for fellow Taoist Feng? Fellow Taoist Feng is someone who has awakened his demonic bloodline. Not only is he tyrannical in strength, but his future achievements will likely be no worse than his big brothers. If this grandmaster really does come back, then turning a blind eye to him is his best choice. Otherwise, he will only be looking for trouble and making himself unhappy. The group of people nodded in agreement. They looked at the smiling, handsome man under the mulberry tree. He wore a green robe that was tailored to his body, making him look even more otherworldly. His long black hair was casually draped over his shoulder, swaying gently in the wind. Confidence and calmness flowed from his body like water. What an extraordinary character, Qin Yu praised inwardly. He walked in front of the exquisite white tablecloth and picked up a crystal cup from the wine tower. He took a sip and nodded in satisfaction. Several maids and servants that serve as temporary attendants revealed hesitation in their eyes. This person didn't seem to be a guest invited by their young master, but Qin Yu's calm demeanor made it so that they didn't dare to offend him. Perhaps this person was their young master's friend. They believed their eyesight wasn't bad. Someone with such a temperament absolutely wouldn't be someone that came to eat and drink. Moreover, who would dare to cause trouble at their young master's banquet? As the several temporary attendants were thinking this, they saw Qin Yu turn around and walk towards several guests that were gathered together. This caused them to calm down, as they thought this person wasn't an ordinary person, otherwise he wouldn't have taken the initiative to speak to them. Luckily, They hadn't been impulsive just now. Otherwise, if they had embarrassed their young master at the banquet, their fates wouldn't have been too good. This black-robed young man's appearance could not be considered handsome. In fact, he even seemed somewhat inexperienced. However, his eyes were deep and bright, and his body gave off an indescribable aura. Several maids couldn't help but look at him. They blinked, wondering if they would have a chance to serve this guest today. A faint blush immediately appeared on their faces. They watched as Yu walked in front of a group of guests. He smiled and said something. After receiving a response, he nodded and glanced at their young master sitting under the mulberry tree. Then, he drank a cup of wine, smiling and thanking them. Then, he walked towards the mulberry tree. When Feng Changjing was very young, he had awakened his demonic bloodline. After some tests, his bloodline strength was Shadow, an ability that a peak assassin must have. A strength that walked in the darkness often had extremely sharp senses. As Yu walked towards him, Feng Changjing subconsciously frowned. He apologized and turned around. Then, he saw Yu calmly walking towards him with a cup of wine in hand. His eyebrows furrowed even tighter. Today's banquet had invited the geniuses selected by the lower sex that had the qualifications to compete for the Demon Ascension Gate. In order to avoid being disrespectful at the banquet, he was well aware of everyone's information, so he was certain that this person wasn't his guest. It was just that Yu's current actions left him hesitant to make a judgment. He decided to take a look first. With this thought in mind, Feng Changjing smiled. "Fellow Taoist, you look unfamiliar. Are you a senior apprentice brother from the Black Demon sect? I am honored that you can attend my banquet today." His words immediately attracted attention. 2 men and 2 women beside him turned to look at him. These people had 2 common characteristics. The first was their youth, and the second was their arrogance, both of which were naturally revealed. Their eyes fell on Yu, lingering for a moment before looking away. They were a bit curious as to why Feng Changjing would be so polite to such an ordinary boy. So what if he was a Black Demon sect cultivator? They had obtained the chance to participate in the Demon Ascension Gate. If they were chosen, they could enter the demonic path. Even if they were unlucky and failed, any of the 12 branches would be more than willing to accept them. Yu smiled and raised his cup. His eyes swept around. The scenery here isn't bad. Unfortunately, I didn't know how to use it before. But now, it seems that it's quite suitable for holding banquets. Feng Changjing's smile faded a bit. "Fellow Taoist, are you familiar with this place?" Yu nodded. "I've lived here for some time. Unfortunately, I was busy cultivating all day and neglected this beautiful scenery. I must thank fellow Taoist Feng for giving me some reminders." Feng Changjing lightly said, "Fellow Taoist, why are you thanking me?" A cold intent circulated around him. The eyes of the 2 young men and 2 young women flashed with surprise. They never thought that this cultivator would dare to be so disrespectful. If this were some other day, they wouldn't mind watching Feng Changjing make a fool of himself. But now, they were at the Black Demon sect, and they were outsiders. Moreover, as the main guests of the banquet, if they were disturbed by someone else, they would also lose face. The 4 people looked over, their cold and indifferent eyes filled with a faint chill. But unfortunately, these threatening gazes had no effect on Yu. He had seen the figure of a divine dragon soaring through the highest heavens, so he naturally wouldn't care about it. He was like a loach tossing about in a pool of black water. Yu smiled. "Of course I have to thank you. After all, this is where I live." He paused for a moment and continued to say, "Oh, I forgot to introduce myself. I am Yao Bin, an alchemist of the Black Demon sect." On the grassland, there was silence in an instant. When Feng Changjing and the others revealed their ill intent, they had already attracted everyone's attention. Although Yu's voice wasn't loud, everyone could still hear him clearly. Many people's eyes widened. This was the original master had returned. Those that knew the inside story were excited. It was clear that a good show was about to begin. The Demon Ascension Gate had a limited number of spots, and Feng Changjing was recognized as a popular candidate. If there was an accident that eliminated him ahead of time, that would be for the best. But It seemed that this was only a beautiful wish. The chances of it coming true were far too small. Feng Changjing frowned for a moment before composing himself. I'm sorry, but I don't know who you are, so please do not disturb my banquet. If there is nothing else, please leave immediately. A cultivator shouted out, Did you hear that? My cousin is telling you to leave. If you continue to pester me, don't blame me for being impolite. This person was tall and sturdy like an iron tower. His muscles bulged out, and his aura was truly astonishing. Wherever he landed, the grassland caved in, forming a deep pit. Countless blades of grass were twisted into powder by the surging energy. Qin Yu didn't even glance at him. I truly don't know who fellow Daoist Feng is, so there's no need to give me any face. Then, please take your people and leave my residence. Moreover, before you leave, it would be best if you restore everything to its original state. I have experienced a great deal of trouble recently, so I don't want any more problems to crop up. Feng Changjing's eyes were ice cold, as if he were looking at a dead man. You are seeking death. With a loud shout, the tall and sturdy cultivator rushed forwards. He lifted a hand and thrust it forwards. The air emitted a shrill scream, and wherever his fingers passed, space would twist. Bang! There was a deep explosion, like a small mountain crashing into the ground. Then, there really was a tall and sturdy figure that tumbled to the ground. The sound of bones breaking wasn't loud, but as it fell into the ears, it caused an instinctive chill to rise from the depths of one's heart. Qin Yu still stood where he was, his aura the same as before. But at this moment, everyone's eyes were filled with shock and disbelief. He hadn't moved at all, but the tall and sturdy cultivator seemed to have crashed into a mountain and was sent flying away. Looking at his incomparably strong body that was still subconsciously twitching in his unconscious state, many people quivered and felt their hair stand on end. I don't want to say the same words a second time. Fellow Daoist Feng, you could take your people and leave now. Qin Yu calmly said, I have other matters to deal with. Compared to the spirit plant materials he had accumulated and the medicine garden that the sect had allocated to him, this dwelling was indeed the lowest in value. Moreover, Tuba and Tutu were still being punished in the dungeon. Even if their lives weren't in danger, Qin Yu still wanted to rescue them as soon as possible. Feng Changjing's eyes suddenly turned pure darkness. His confident and carefree aura suddenly turned into a boundless chill. Yao Bin, congratulations. You have successfully angered me. Shua, he instantly vanished from where he stood. No one could clearly see his movements. In the next moment, he appeared behind Qin Yu and pointed a finger at the back of his head. His fingertip was the same as his eyes, pure darkness. Underneath this hue, his finger seemed like it was made of jade, emitting a faint halo of light. The demonic bloodline, Shadow, not only did it have the ability to hide, but its killing power was even more terrifying. It was just that in these past years he had hidden it deeply and had never used it in front of others. It was just that Qin Yu's performance just now had left him feeling restless, so he didn't hesitate to use his strongest strength. Qin Yu's heart skipped a beat, and a warm current surged through his body. On his back, a demon head appeared, and its eyes opened. Feng Changjing's cold and callous face suddenly revealed a look of panic. At this moment, he felt as if he had been locked onto by someone at the top of the food chain. Shadow's strength began to fluctuate. Even his movements became sluggish and his speed dropped. Qin Yu revealed a look of surprise. He never thought that such a situation would occur. The demonic bloodline in his body had actually awakened on its own and suppressed Feng Changjing's bloodline strength. Although he didn't fear Feng Changjing's demonic bloodline at all, in this state he could clearly win more easily. Without looking back, Qin Yu stepped forwards. The ground trembled, and a shock wave visible to the naked eye erupted in all directions. Feng Changjing bore the brunt of this attack. Before he could respond, he was sent flying away. Following that, the long tables on the field were smashed to pieces. Hurry and dodge. Don't touch him. In the chaos, the guests dodged in distress. In the blink of an eye, the entire banquet had been thoroughly destroyed. Puff! Feng Changjing spat out a mouthful of blood. His complexion was as white as paper, and his body wavered. He glared at Qin Yu, his eyes filled with hatred, but even more with fear. This was because from Qin Yu, he could feel a demonic bloodline that absolutely crushed him. This other person was also a natural-born disciple of the demonic path. Qin Yu had no expression. Feng Changjing, I don't know, nor do I care whether you were plotted against or whether you took the initiative to occupy my residence. But this doesn't affect the result, so I'm still unhappy. Today was only a light punishment. If you are unwilling, I will accompany you at any time. But next time, you will not have such good luck. I will go and deal with other matters. Before I return, restore this place to its original state. Otherwise, believe me when I say that you will regret this. As the group of lower sects came up to participate in the Demon Ascension Gate, the geniuses all had complicated expressions on their faces. Then, Qin Yu turned and walked away, leaving behind an unreachable back. 2 men and 2 women, for seated contestants, all had pale faces. As they looked at Feng Changjing, they couldn't help but reveal resentment. If it weren't for him, how could they have provoked such a terrifying character? They heard that this person was also going to participate in the Demon Ascension Gate. If so, didn't that mean they might meet in the arena soon? Thinking of this possibility, the 4 people instinctively revealed fear in their eyes. They clenched their teeth and left. The banquet that had started perfectly ended in a sad manner. Feng Changjing clearly wasn't an idiot. On the contrary, he was someone who was able to let go of things easily. Before everyone had left, he had already ordered his servants to clean up the messy grassland. This was because he was well aware that he wasn't Qin Yu's match. In the short term, there was no way he could retaliate against Qin Yu. If so, then he would decisively admit defeat and not give Qin Yu a chance to continue making things difficult for him. As for everything that happened today, there would be countless possibilities in the future. Every alchemy grandmaster in the Black Demon sect had their own medicine garden divided by the sect. Of course, these so-called medicine gardens weren't spirit plants, but all sorts of monster beasts. Thus, in the demonic path, this sort of medicine garden was called a monster beast hunting ground. According to quality and size, there were 13 monster beast hunting grounds in the Black Demon sect. They were numbered according to their quality. Yao Bin's original monster beast hunting grounds were the 12th and 13th. It was just that he had substituted himself for Jiang Taisho in a competition of detoxification and became the #1 alchemist in the Black Demon sect. He didn't need to appear at all, and the Black Demon sect automatically replaced him, giving him the 4th and 5th monster beast hunting grounds. As for the 1st and 2nd monster beast hunting grounds, they had always been the private property of the Lord Sect Master. As for the 3rd monster beast hunting ground, it was owned by the Chief Elder. Thus, what Qin Yu obtained was the best monster beast hunting ground. When news of Yao Bin leaving the sect without permission was released, although some people were tempted, they didn't dare to recklessly do anything. But as time passed, there was no news from Yao Bin. As the Demon Ascension Gate approached, more and more covetous gazes came from all over the sect. An inter-sect elder took the lead and joined forces with 2 alchemy grandmasters to take away the 4th monster beast hunting ground. As for the 5th monster beast hunting ground, it was occupied by 2 other alchemy grandmasters. But they never imagined that after paying a considerable price to quell the discontent of all sides, and after obtaining the rights to 2 monster beast hunting grounds, Yao Bin would actually return. Feng Changjing had been in the limelight recently. He possessed the demonic bloodline and was one of the hottest topics in the Demon Ascension Gate. His future was limitless. It was because of this that his every move was paid close attention to. The news that Yao Bin had appeared and swept through his banquet and easily defeated him spread through the entire Black Demon sect in a short period of time. Thus, when Qin Yu's figure appeared in the 4th monster beast hunting ground, there were already people waiting at the entrance. Interestingly enough, this was the first time that Qin Yu had come to his own monster beast hunting ground. The entrance was in the mountain wall, an ordinary crack. Deep within this crack was a small world. This was the true monster beast hunting ground, and there were many monster beast communities that lived and multiplied within. Grandmaster Yao Bin's smooth return is truly a cause for celebration. The one who spoke was a tall and thin old man standing at the front. He wore long robes, and the dark golden lines on his sleeves indicated that he was an elder of the sect. At this time, he was all smiles, but there was a flash of surprise in his eyes. Yao Bin had always been mysterious in the Black Demon sect. He never imagined he would be so young. Qin Yu cupped his hands together. "Greetings, elder." He looked up and continued to say, "During this period of time, I've had to trouble Elder to help me take care of the monster beast hunting ground. Now that I've returned, I won't bother you any further." To put it bluntly, the main character had returned, so scram back to wherever you came from. The tall and thin old man's smile didn't change. "My name is Tian Jun. I have been in seclusion for many years, so I don't think Grandmaster Yao recognizes me. But I have heard of Grandmaster Yao's name before. Now that I see you today, you truly live up to your reputation. I have already ordered people to prepare some meager wine. Grandmaster Yao, would you be willing to give me some face?" Qin Yu shook his head. "I apologize. I still have to visit many people, so I don't have the time." Behind him, several young cultivators had ill complexions. It was clear they were dissatisfied with Qin Yu's performance. Although Elder Tian's status in the sect wasn't high, his status was extremely honored. If the current sect master saw him, he would have to call him High Master. This surname, Yao, actually dared to be so arrogant. Tianjin smiled. "Since Grandmaster Yao has matters to attend to, it won't be too late to postpone the banquet. But I just happen to need to refine a batch of pills, and I need to capture monster beasts from the hunting ground. I wonder if Grandmaster Yao can extend the time by several days. At most half a month, I will send someone to deliver the entrance key to Grandmaster Yao's residence." Qin Yu faintly smiled. "Does Elder Tian think I'm stupid?" Tian Jun's smile faded. "What does Grandmaster Yao mean by this?" Chapter 473. Yao Bin, don't think you can disrespect Elder Tian just because you are the #1 alchemist in the sect. Hurry up and apologize to Elder Tian, otherwise I guarantee you will regret it. Who are you? You dare to bare your fangs in front of Elder Tian? You simply have no idea of death or danger." The crowd behind him roared out. They didn't hesitate to seize this chance to show their loyalty. Tian Jun lifted a hand, and his voice instantly vanished. "Grandmaster Yao, do you really want to do this?" Qin Yu had a sincere expression. "I ask Elder Tian to believe me. If it weren't for me giving you face, you would have to compensate me for the monster beasts I caught while I was gone." Tian Jun sighed. "I originally wanted to make friends with Grandmaster Yao, but it seems it's a pity." A sharp light flashed in his eyes. "You and I are both demonic path cultivators, so we will do things according to the rules of the demonic path. As long as Grandmaster Yao can withstand a punch from me, I will return the monster beast hunting ground to you today. I will also compensate you for the monster beasts I caught before. I wonder if Grandmaster Yao dares to agree?" Qin Yu smiled. "Why wouldn't I dare?" As he spoke, he stepped forwards and approached like a bolt of lightning. "But let's switch sides. If Elder Tian can withstand a punch from me, I will give this monster beast hunting ground to you." Tianjin laughed. "Good, then I will ask for your advice." He clenched his fists and thrust them outwards. He looked up and roared, the crackling sounds of bones exploding from his body. His originally tall and thin body instantly bulged with muscles that glowed a pale gold. He had become the embodiment of a terrifying king of hell. Between the heavens and earth, there was a loud roar. A Dharma idol appeared above Tianjin's head, its appearance similar to his true self. A terrifying aura erupted from it, overwhelming the world. The two alchemy grandmasters revealed smiles. They looked at Qin Yu with undisguised contempt. Elder Tian's ranking in the sect wasn't high, but he had a 4th-level blue sea cultivation and also cultivated the diamond demon subduing realm. His defensive abilities were far more tyrannical than his killing abilities. Even a 6th-level Blue Sea might not be able to break through Elder Tion's defenses, so what could Yao Bin do? Indeed, their decision to pull Tianjun along to obtain the 4th monster beast hunting ground was the correct one. So what if this surname Yao came back? He was just asking to be humiliated. The group of cultivators all revealed awe and worship in their eyes. As they looked at Qinyu, they revealed cruel smiles, as if they could already see their bones shattering with a single punch. Surprise flashed in Qinyu's eyes. This black demon sect was truly worthy of being one of the 12 branches of the demonic path. There were truly hidden dragons and crouching tigers. Even the unknown Tianjun had such strength. But that was all. After consolidating his Blue Sea realm, although Qinyu hadn't tested his true strength, his intuition told him that crushing Tianjun wouldn't be a problem at all. Shua, a silver-white light flashed by, faster than lightning. It was impossible to see with the naked eye. It was sharp, destructive, and murderous. Although it only appeared for a moment, it caused the hearts of all the cultivators present to violently contract. They suddenly felt a sense of fear, as if they were meat on the chopping block. Tianjun's eyes opened wide, and his face was filled with shock and astonishment. He slowly lowered his head, and the sound of flesh tearing suddenly sounded out from his chest. Fresh blood instantly drenched his clothes, and his swollen body was like a punctured balloon that swiftly shriveled up. It was even to the extent that he was even thinner than before, and he was simply skin and bones. Starting from the chest of the Dharma idol above his head, a crack quietly appeared. Then a second crack, a third crack. The cracks densely covered the entire Dharma idol, who, strong winds rose between the heavens and earth. The collapse of the Dharma idol formed a tide of spiritual strength that uprooted several large trees, turning them to dust. The 2 alchemy grandmasters and their disciples all screamed in panic as they were sent flying away. Although they wouldn't lose their lives, it was inevitable that they would suffer. Tianjun's lips moved. He looked up at Qinyu, his eyes filled with awe and shock. This was because he could faintly feel that the silver light had restrained a portion of its strength at the end. Otherwise, his fate wouldn't have been as simple as having his supernatural powers broken and being wounded. Yao Bin had the strength to kill him. As soon as this thought appeared, Tianjun's heart turned icy cold. Even though he couldn't suppress his regret, he still couldn't help it. Because he had a good disciple, he had lived an extremely good life in the Black Demon sect. Obtaining the 4th monster beast hunting ground was only the icing on the cake. Who would have thought that because of this matter, he would offend such a terrifying character? Tianjun cursed the 18 generations of female ancestors of the 2 alchemy grandmasters that had encouraged him to attack. He squeezed out a smile and said, "Grandmaster Yao's cultivation is amazing. I admit defeat. The key to the monster beast hunting ground is here. I ask Grandmaster to accept it." He handed back the key and continued to say, "If I offended you before, as an apology, I am willing to pay 50 million spirit stones to purchase the captured monster beasts." Qinyu didn't refuse. Tianjun handed over his spirit stone card and turned to leave. He didn't even dare to say half a word. The demonic path respected strength, and the powerhouses were supreme. Even if the current sect master was his disciple, he absolutely wouldn't dare to make an enemy of such a superior existence. Otherwise, even if he was killed, he could only blame himself, and no one would stand up for him. Qinyu watched them leave in a panic. Then, he looked up towards the depths of the Black Demon sect. The heaven and earth spiritual strength there was even richer. This was where the high-level figures of the sect lived. Qinyu had spared Feng Changjing and now showed mercy to Tianjun. This wasn't because Qinyu was soft-hearted, but because ever since he returned to the Black Demon sect, there had been something strange about the situation. Through Su Sheng, Qinyu had learned the general gist of what had happened. Although he didn't know the true reason, it was clear that the Black Demon sect's attention towards him wasn't normal. It had to be known that it was common for cultivators to go into seclusion. In particular, once one reached the divine soul realm and above, because their lifespans would rise dramatically, it was normal for them to go into seclusion for several years or even longer. But not too long after he left the Black Demon sect, he had been thoroughly investigated. Even Tuba and Tutu had been imprisoned, and even Su Sheng, who was close to him, had suffered a calamity. Qin didn't believe that there wasn't something fishy going on here. The Black Demon sect must have some unknown reason that they valued him so much. Since they valued him so much, why hadn't anyone from the Black Demon sect come to contact him since he returned? It was like they were deliberately pretending not to know and were waiting for something. His residence had been occupied, his servants had been imprisoned, and all his belongings had been carved up. It was natural for Qin to be angry. And after anger came revenge. And revenge was likely to result in death. This was especially true for those of the demonic path, where killing was a common occurrence. Qin wasn't sure whether or not his guess was correct, but since he had concerns, he naturally had his guard up. This was why he showed mercy. The small conflict that occurred in the fourth monster beast hunting ground spread through the entire Black Demon sect at an even more astonishing speed. In fact, the defeat of one of the sect's veteran powerhouses, Elder Tianjun, was not a minor matter. But, looking at the situation when both sides fought, there wasn't even the least bit of entanglement, and victory was decided in a single move. There weren't any serious casualties, so calling it a small conflict could be considered appropriate. But it was precisely this small conflict that caused everyone in the Black Demon sect to realize just how fierce Grandmaster Yao was. Thus, everything that happened afterwards became natural. The two alchemy grandmasters that occupied the fifth monster beast hunting ground didn't need Qin to say anything. They took the initiative to offer up the entrance key, as well as 50 million spirit stones. If even the sect master's honorable master, Elder Tianjun, was like this, would they dare to be an exception? But as they thought about how their moment of greed had caused them to suffer a double loss, the two grandmasters felt bitter in their hearts, as if they had swallowed 17 or 18 yellow lotuses in a single breath. Qin thought for a moment and didn't continue to visit others. Instead, he had the two grandmasters pass on a message. The general meaning was, those who took his things, as long as they returned them, everything would be fine and nothing would happen. Everyone could still be happy friends. As this news spread out, many people let out long breaths of relief, a look of joy on their faces. But soon, their complexions darkened. Although Grandmaster Yao Bin had said that as long as they returned their things, they could still be friends, only an idiot would believe that. After stealing someone else's belongings and discovering that they couldn't win, they could return them and call it even. Even an idiot would know this was a delusion. Wasn't adding 30% as an apology? But this was only an apology. If they wanted to appease Grandmaster Yao Bin's anger, they needed to add another 30%. And the key point was that the strength that Grandmaster Yao Bin had revealed today was simply ridiculously strong. This was a massive thigh they could latch onto. Who didn't want to take advantage of this opportunity? If they wanted to latch onto a thigh, they first needed the Grandmaster to have a favorable impression of them. Then, the question was, how much did they need to invest in order to have a favorable impression of the Grandmaster? After thinking about it, many people discovered that returning 2 times was enough, and 3 times was enough to show their face. But the problem was that although everyone knew how to do the math, their pockets couldn't bear it. In particular, those who had been smug and arrogant before couldn't even cry now. This time, it was likely that they would lose their pants. Of course, smart people were everywhere. There were also many people who were waiting for the sect to make a move. From how they had dealt with Yao Bin previously, it seemed that the sect had some opinions about him. It was just that they didn't know how many of these opinions would remain after he revealed his current cultivation. They would wait for the situation to become clear before making a decision. The chief elder was shocked. He had imagined countless possibilities, but he never imagined that the final result would be Yao Bin crushing everyone else and easily taking back everything. Although there were some conflicts throughout the entire process, no one died, so it wasn't a big deal at all. If they wanted to use this to suppress Yao Bin, they clearly didn't have the qualifications to do so. And most importantly, with the strength that Yao Bin had displayed today, could he still be suppressed? The chief elder's eyes flashed. He stood up and entered the sect's forbidden area through the transmission array. Tai Qianxiu wasn't cultivating. He nodded as he saw the chief elder arrive, his expression calm, as if he weren't surprised by his arrival. The chief elder respectfully bowed. He was well aware that although the sect master was in seclusion all year round, he hadn't lost control over the sect. Sect master, Yao Bin has returned. It's just that I don't know how to deal with the current situation. I asked the sect master to give me some instructions. Tai Qianxiu didn't reply. Yao Bin's strength has indeed surpassed expectations. In the opinion of the chief elder, what level has he reached? The chief elder hesitated for a long time. Although Elder Tianjun is only at the 4th level of the Blue Sea realm, because of his supernatural abilities, even someone 2 small boundaries higher than him might not be able to injure him. Yao Bin didn't use any treasures, so I believe that his cultivation is at the 8th level of the Blue Sea realm. 8th level of the Blue Sea realm. Tai Qianxiu shook his head. I think it's more than that. He should be at the 9th level. The chief elder's eyes shook. He didn't doubt the sect master's judgment at all. 9th level, throughout the entire land of divinity and demons, this was an absolute peak master. They could establish their own sect and become an old ancestor. If they had a lucky chance, it wouldn't be difficult to open up a territory and establish their own country. A strange light flashed in Tai Qianxiu's eyes. He lightly said, with Yao Bin's strength, whether he left the sect or attacked today can't be considered a great mistake at all. If we want to capture him, we will need an even greater crime, otherwise I will lose my reputation. The chief elder bowed. I asked the sect master to explain. Did the chief elder report Feng Changjing to the list? Yes, but Yao Bin was very careful and only wounded him. This isn't enough. Tai Qianxiu's lips curled up. Wounding Feng Changjing isn't anything, but what if he killed him? Even if there was a reason for this, a disciple that participated in the Demon Ascension Gate being killed is still a great crime in my demonic path. The chief elder's heart skipped a beat, as if he wanted to say something. Tai Qianxiu lightly said, I know the chief elder's scruples, but what does this have to do with us? The one who killed him was Yao Bin. Drawing back 10,000 steps, even if someone suspects him, so what? Once I remove the hidden dangers in my body, I will have a chance of reaching the calamity immortal realm within 10 years. The chief elder was overjoyed. Is sect master speaking the truth? Chief elder, have you ever seen me say something I'm not certain of? Chapter 474. It was said that the demonic bloodline, the power of shadow, had an extremely sharp perception. Thus, Feng Changjing, who was in seclusion recovering from his wounds, found it hard to calm his mind. This sort of feeling had appeared in his memories before. It often meant that he was about to encounter some bad situation. Feng Changjing's first thought was that Yao Bin didn't want to let him go. Although he seemed magnanimous today, the truth was that he didn't want to attack in front of everyone and bear a crime that he couldn't wash away. This person wanted to secretly attack him. Feng Changjing's heart skipped a beat, and panic appeared in his eyes. If it were anyone else, even if they were stronger than him and had the power of the demonic bloodline, they still wouldn't be able to silently kill him. But Yao Bin was different. Although he didn't know what the demonic bloodline in his body was, there was no doubt that the power of this bloodline could completely suppress him. Once the shadow bloodline was suppressed, he would become blind and deaf. In addition to his severe wounds, killing him wouldn't be difficult at all. Come. Feng Changjing gathered all of his subordinates. These were masters sent to him by his family in order to prevent any accidents. After arranging everything, Feng Changjing's heart calmed down a little. But after a moment of hesitation, he took out a jade slip and marked it with a divine sense message. Kacha! The jade slip was crushed. This was a delayed message. If he died, it would immediately be sent out. I hope I'm just overthinking things. Feng Changjing whispered to himself. His complexion changed. Who is it? He fiercely turned around, and his aura instantly erupted. But it was already too late. A palm came from behind him and pressed against the back of his head. Feng Changjing froze where he was, and the light in his eyes slowly faded away. He tried to turn his head to see if his judgment was correct, but in the end he couldn't and died. A temporary message had just been stored when it was sent out because of the death of its host. Now it's perfect. A low whisper sounded out in the room and then vanished. Besides Feng Changjing's corpse, there was no other trace. Qin Yu entered the dungeon and visited Tuba and Tutu. They had just washed up and were respectfully invited to a table to eat. Seeing the two of them eating and drinking, it was clear they hadn't suffered any serious injuries. Qin Yu smiled and nodded. You've worked hard during this period. Tuba and Tutu knelt on the ground, their faces filled with ecstasy as they kissed the earth and cried tears of joy. The cultivators in the dungeon were shocked. These barbarians were truly loyal. How could they know that Qin Yu's safety concerned the entire Titan tribe? In Tuba and Tutu's hearts, his safety was even more important than their own lives. Qin Yu's heart warmed. Although there were other reasons for this feeling of being worried about by others was really good. After all, although the land of divinity and demons was vast, how many people truly cared about him? Subconsciously, he thought of Ning Liang. That silly girl should be one of them. When he escaped from Four Seasons City, she had clearly been kept in the dark. She was likely heartbroken, right? However, this was also good. After thinking that he was already dead, after a moment of grief, he would eventually be able to walk out of the shadow. This was not necessarily a bad result. Tuba grinned. Master, there is no need to worry. Our skin is thick and our flesh is thick. We don't care about a little bit of suffering. Look, don't you think Tuba and I have become much whiter? If we return to the tribe now, the two of us will definitely be pursued by those women who are infatuated with pretty boys. Qin Yu smiled and didn't say anything. In fact, he knew that it was impossible for Tuba and Tutu to be as relaxed as they said they were. But there were some things that didn't need to be said clearly. Su Sheng's matter is the first. The two barbarian warriors under my command are the second. As for the others that were implicated because of me, they are the third. Qin Yu smiled, not saying anything. In fact, he knew that it was impossible for Tuba and Tutu to be as relaxed as they said they were. But there are some things that didn't need to be said clearly. Su Sheng's matter is the first. My two barbarian warriors are the second. There are also some other people that were implicated because of me. That is the third. It is clear that the dungeon is the place that I hate the most after returning. So, you had best think of a way to satisfy all those you hurt. If they are satisfied, then this matter will end here. But if they aren't satisfied, then you will feel extremely sad. The steward behind him trembled like a sieve. As he thought about the losses they would suffer, he even had the thought of dying. Yes, don't worry, I will definitely satisfy the Grandmaster. Losing money to avoid calamity. Losing money to avoid calamity. As long as people were safe, everything could be recovered. The steward rejoiced in his heart. This was because he had experienced far too many slaughters. The victors of the demonic path often didn't have much mercy. Thus, he had developed an extremely cautious temperament. But who would have thought that he would make a mistake this time? The steward could feel the hateful gazes from behind him. He sighed inwardly. He knew that the days when he ruled over the dungeon would soon be over, and he would never return. However, the most important matter right now was to find a way to obtain Su Sheng's forgiveness. With his ability to poison people, after learning about the current situation, even an idiot would know that saying that Su Sheng had opened his mouth like a lion was being too lenient. This little brat, it was a mistake not to drown him in a basin of water. The steward's heart filled with sorrow. Qin Yu didn't bring Tuba and Tutu away, since the sect had ordered them to be imprisoned. Then waiting for the sect to release them was the best choice. Moreover, looking at the sneering expressions on their faces as they stared at the group of leaders in the dungeon, he feared that they might not be willing to leave now. As he left the dungeon, he was thinking about when the Black Demon sect would contact him, what excuse they would use, and what sort of attitude they would have. But he never imagined that before he returned to his dwelling, he would receive news of Feng Changjing's death. He stood there in a daze for a moment. Qin Yu seriously considered the possibility of bringing Tuba and Tutu out of the Black Demon sect. Or could he hide in the space of his status token and wait until things calmed down before secretly escaping? But in the end, he decided to wait a bit longer and see just what the Black Demon sect wanted. This was because Qin Yu couldn't think of any reason why the Black Demon sect would go to such lengths to deal with him. A single stone stirred up 1,000 waves. Countless mourning faces turned into smiles. In particular, after the news that Feng Changjing had entered the Demon Ascension Gate's name list was confirmed, their smiles rose to the max. In the dungeon, the chief steward tried his best to maintain his composure. He coldly glanced at the two barbarians who were sleeping soundly after eating and drinking their fill. With a sneer, he turned and left. Behind him, the other stewards who had been filled with deep hatred and bitterness were now all smiling like chrysanthemums. They began to flatter and flatter the chief steward. The chief steward disdainfully thought, "Humph, I knew it. With my fiery eyes, how could I have made a mistake?" Within the sect, there were definitely people who disliked Yao Bin. If he killed Feng Changjing, would the Feng family let him off? If he killed a participant of the Demon Ascension Gate, would the demonic path send down thunder? In short, this surname, Yao, was completely finished. The chief elder's face was as cold as ice, and his eyes were as cold as the midwinter wind, making one feel as if they had fallen into an icy lake. "Yao Bin, you are suspected of killing Feng Changjing. Immediately surrender yourself and accept investigation." Qin Yu sat in a place that had just been a lively banquet not too long ago. He looked up at the bright full moon above his head and put down the wine cup in his hands. "Chief Elder, are you sure you want the atmosphere to become so stiff? I am a rather sensitive person. Who knows when I might suddenly go berserk? At that time, the situation might not be salvageable." The chief elder had no expression. "Are you threatening me?" Qin Yu smiled. "I don't dare. I'm only speaking the truth." The chief elder was silent for several breaths of time. Then, he coldly said, "All of you leave. Without my permission, no one is allowed to approach." Behind him, a group of black-robed punishment division cultivators bowed. Then, they dispersed like a tide, submerging into the shadows and vanishing from sight. Qin Yu gestured with his hand. "Chief, please sit." He looked around. "Or perhaps I should ask the Lord Sect Master to come out, lest others say that I am too insolent and inconsiderate in my hospitality." The chief elder's pupils shrank, and a bit more coldness appeared in his eyes. But before he could say anything, a smile rose up. "Yao Bin, I really didn't underestimate you." Tai Qianxiu walked out from behind a mulberry tree. Qin Yu lowered his head and drank some wine, a bit of shock in his eyes. If it weren't for the soul-summoning bell trembling, he wouldn't have discovered the aura of this Black Demon sect master. This person's strength was far greater than he imagined. He likely already had a peak blue sea cultivation. But when he looked up, Qin Yu's expression was light. He gestured and said, "Sect Master, please sit." Tai Qianxiu strode forward and sat down. He picked up a jug of wine and poured himself a full cup. Then, he drank it all in a single gulp and smiled. "This is truly good wine. No wonder Grandmaster Yao was entertaining guests here so late at night." This hospitality was clearly to wait. Qin Yu took out a third wine cup. "I didn't think the chief elder would also be here today. I've been a bit neglectful." The chief elder had no expression. "I'm not good at drinking wine." He stood behind Tai Qianxiu and closed his eyes, looking like a statue. Qin Yu smiled, not bothering with him any further. "Lord Sect Master, you have to attend to numerous affairs every day, and your time is incomparably precious. Let's not beat around the bush. Just what do you want from me?" Tai Qianxiu reached out a hand. "I like your direct personality. I think you should be aware that it was I who brought Yao Bin back to the Black Demon sect, so my understanding of him is far greater than the average person's." His eyes brightened. But, I wonder, just who are you? The chief elder's eyes shot open, a look of shock on his face. Qin, you stopped pouring wine. He clapped his hands. Lord Sect Master is wise, but I really am Yao Bin, an alchemist of the Black Demon sect. What do you think? Tai Chinchou suddenly laughed. That's right, you are Yao Bin. His eyes were deep. Then, looking at how I saved your life in the past, there is something I hope Grandmaster Yao can agree to. Qin Yu said, Sect Master, please speak. Tai Chinchou said, in truth, it's very simple. In the early years, my sect was plotted against by others. Although I managed to kill a powerful enemy and preserve my life, there were still hidden dangers left behind in my body. Not too long ago, I found a method that might be able to resolve these hidden dangers. But I will need to borrow the assistance of several poisons. Grandmaster Yao's detoxification methods are first class in the world. If you can help me, my sect will have no worries. Qin Yu bitterly smiled. He finally understood where the problem was. In the end, it was because he had been in the limelight too much and had fallen into Tai Chinchou's eyes. Indeed, acting cool had its risks. He had to be careful when acting cool, but it was too late to regret it now. So, he only thought about it for a moment before suppressing it. So that's how it is. I thank Sect Master for dispelling my doubts. But as long as Sect Master asks, I will naturally agree. Why would I need to cause such a ruckus? Tai Chinchou didn't deny it. This is where I must apologize to Grandmaster Yao. The method to resolve the hidden dangers in my body is extremely dangerous, so the progress will be slow. Moreover, once it begins, there is no way to stop it. I estimate that in 3 years, the hidden dangers in my body will be resolved, so Qin Yu had no expression. So, I cannot participate in the Demon Ascension Gate. At this point, the truth was revealed. The chief elder sneered. The grace of saving your life is greater than the heavens. Since you are Yao Bin, you should naturally repay the sect master's favor in the past. Do you still dare to harbor any resentment in your heart? Tai Chinchou waved his hand. In this matter, I was indeed in the wrong. Once the hidden dangers in my body are resolved, I guarantee that I will give Grandmaster Yao a good fortune no less than the Demon Ascension Gate. Moreover, 100 years from now, when the Demon Ascension Gate reopens, I guarantee that you'll be able to enter the demonic path. Qin Yu took a deep breath. Sect Master, can't you wait until the Demon Ascension Gate reopens to deal with the hidden dangers in your body? Tai Chinchou lightly said, my natural disposition is to be cautious, and I like to have everything under my control. What I fear the most is unnecessary troubles. If Grandmaster Yao enters the demonic path, there will be far too many changes, so I must apologize. As he apologized, his eyes revealed a faint chill. It was clear that there was no room for discussion in this matter. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.